Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Dr. Roda.
Good afternoon, sir. Steve Jobs once said, "Have the courage to follow your heart and intuition, they somehow know what you truly want to become." And it is in opportunities like these that we can realize the true meaning behind these words. With this very quote, I welcome all the extreme panelists and the audience to this Propel Pitchfest 21. We're delighted to have you all here. Pitchfest 21 is the platform provided by Propel, incubated at BML Munjal University to encourage new ideas, innovations, and young startups. It allows for the startups to showcase their ventures and interact with investors, and build a network with ecosystem players and have the thoughts of the thoughtful leaders. Now we have Professor Devendra Singh, sir, Assistant Dean and Associate Professor, Propel Incubator. Sir has over 25 years of extensive industry experience, both with global companies such as Coca-Cola and Foster's International, and Indian companies such as NDDB, Jagajit Industries, and Calvin Klein, to say a few words. So,
Thank you, Kakul. Welcome to everybody to Propel Pitchfest. Vice Chancellor Dr. Manoj Arora, Dean School of Management and Director I2E Dr. Vishal Talwar, Dr. Manik Kumar, Dean School of Engineering and Technology, dignitaries, ladies and friends, welcome to Propel Pitchfest 21. Thanks for joining us. We hope and wish that you and your family are safe in the current challenging times. Pitchfest is the annual startup event organized by Propel, the incubator at BML Munjal University. Now, India has been going through quite a challenging times. And I would like to talk about three things with you, which are not directly related to the current challenge, but are something which are important when we think about innovation and entrepreneurship. The first thing that I would like to talk about is that India's population is one of the youngest. Okay, so we have one of the youngest population in the world, and this actually is a reservoir of energy, creativity, and passion. And they have the ability to drive this country forward. They are the ones who uniquely have this capability. Second thing that I want to talk about is that I want to highlight is that India is the third biggest innovation and startup hub. Okay, and we have built a platform at India level which actually provides the youth a lot of entrepreneurial ecosystem, very strong entrepreneurial ecosystem for them to go forward. The third thing is that we already have in India almost 50 unicorns. A unicorn being a company, a startup which is valued at $1 billion and above. And out of this, the more interesting thing is out of these 50, 10 of them have actually come up in the last 4 months in 2021. So 10 unicorns have come up during the COVID period itself. And in April itself, in the just 1 week, there were 6 unicorns. Now, what this tells is that India is actually, we all Indians, the youth in India are actually well poised to really drive the startup system across the world. So it's no longer, it's not going to be too long before India could be a big contender, at the same level as what US and China are today in innovation and entrepreneurship. Nipun, can you stop the presentation, please? Thank you. Now we are, as a nation, we as a nation are something, should be using this opportunity of youth, of the capability that youth have in terms of driving this innovation across the country. Now, Pitchfest21 that we are doing at BML Munjal University is a platform that we are creating for the students, for the young innovators, for young startups, not just within the university, but across the country and even connecting across the globe. We want the youth, young startups to really be able to come and showcase their capabilities, their ventures, come and interact with young, successful entrepreneurs, meet up with investors. And through this process, they do not only learn from them, but also create lifelong connections, lifelong networks, which they can leverage as they go forward in their entrepreneurial journey. Now, what a young startup really requires is, from any place, especially from a university, when they come and start studying, what they're looking for is an environment where they can be allowed to think creatively, where they can be allowed to question the status quo, and then be given that freedom to pursue their dream, then be given the support to take the risk which go with entrepreneurship, and then be given that mentorship and ability to access risk capital. And these are some of the things that we are focusing on at Propel, which is the incubator at BML Munjal University. Now, over this 2 days of the event, which is Propel Pitchfest21, we have put together a set of panel discussions where topics of current relevance, topics which are relevant to the startups, especially at the stage that they are in, would be covered. And these topics will be discussed by successful entrepreneurs, where they, along with the investors. So this would allow the entrepreneurs, the young startups, to gain from this interaction. Apart from these interactions, we also would have the grand finale of the pitching contest. This will be happening tomorrow, where the finalist of the pitching contest will be presenting to a jury comprising of angel investors. And we would then be concluding tomorrow with a declaration of the winners. And in between the two sessions, we will be conducting investor and legal clinic for the participants to the pitching contest. So over the next 2 days, we hope all of you who have joined us and would be with us, you would gain a lot from being with us, going through this 2 days of session. And we really look forward to having you spend time with us and gain from these discussions. Thank you so much for taking time out and being with us and joining this event. We hope that you and your families remain safe, especially during the current challenging times, and we can go past this and be positive as we go through this. Thank you so much. Over to you, Kakul.
Thank you so much, sir. May I now request Dr. Vishal Talwar, Dean of School of Management, Director, Institute of Innovation Entrepreneurship. He has also worked as faculty in leading universities and business schools, such as the London School of Economics, and the Henley Business School, University of Reading, Dr. Talwar has published in leading journals such as the Journal of Business Ethics. So please address the gathering.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kapil. And thanks everybody for joining us today. I know these are testing and challenging times for us all. And I would imagine every person here joining us today has somebody or the other near or far who has been going through this particular situation right now. But I'm sure we'll come out stronger. We, as Indians, I'm sure we'll come out rather strong out of this over a period of time. Coming back to I2E and what we are planning, and of course, the Propel, the Pitch Fest, and all the activities around that you see today are essentially part of the whole vision of the Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And the vision for the Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship is manifold. I just want to highlight a few things. We would like to, as a university, be a young, dynamic, progressive university. We would like to create an ecosystem to encourage a lot of innovation, entrepreneurship among students and faculty. And remember, it's not about students who are essentially within the university, but our alumni, the people outside, a lot of people who have a lot of innovative ideas and the ability to reach certain aspirations and goals. And of course, the right kind of mentoring and guidance for them. We would like to engage with them. We would like to work with them, because I think irrespective of whether it's challenging times or otherwise, I think we are on the cusp of an entrepreneurial renaissance or revolution. So we would like to be part of it as a university. We would like to nurture entrepreneurs who are innovative, tenacious, ethical, and have a great zeal to create economic value and societal impact through the ventures. We would like to advance and disseminate best-in-class contemporary knowledge and practices in the field of innovation and entrepreneurship. So essentially, our idea is to be able to look at the situation three-pronged: the teaching, the research, as well as the actual tangible innovations that we are able to offer to society. How do we achieve this? Our mission, of course, is to conduct a lot of programs, courses, events, and what you see today is a manifestation of that. Various challenges, engagements to ignite a spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship among students, faculty, and community. We would like to build an ecosystem of entrepreneurs, mentors, experts, and service providers to leverage a lot of all this. We would like to drive active engagement of, with the industry as well. We as a university, right from day one, we've been rather clear that the industry engagement has to be very, very strong. And this is what we're building and we already have built. And this is something that we would also want to do via the innovation and entrepreneurship route as well. We would like to collaborate with academia, with policymakers, industry in general, to be able to achieve those goals. We have a good number of people who are backing us for this. We have a 5-year strategic plan wherein we are intending to fulfill every year certain objectives for ourselves. We backed up by, as I was mentioning earlier, a strong team. And we also have a steering committee. And this steering committee consists of a lot of people who are at different stages in society, have been there, done that, have a lot of ability to help mentor, guide, and also open doors for a lot of the startup enthusiasts who would like to engage with us. So we have His Excellency Dr. George Go Chinghua, who's the chairman of Board of Mission. He's the chairman of the steering committee. We have, of course, our chancellor, Mr. Sunil Munjal. We have Mr. Akshay Munjal, who's the president. We have Professor Dr. Jerry George. We have Mr. Chris Gopalakrishnan. We have Professor Sankalp Chaturvedi. We have Mr. Rahul Garg, founder and CEO of Moglix. We have Dr. Dinesh Dua, who's executive director of Nectar Life Sciences Limited. We got Mr. Kanwal Singh, who's founder and managing partner of Fireside Ventures. So this team is helping us, prepare ourselves, strengthen ourselves, help us in being able to capitalize on a lot of strengths we have, in being able to collaborate, incorporate, and configure a lot of resources that are obviously required to be able to achieve that initial vision and mission that we were talking about. And of course, if there are people today in the audience who would like to know more about what our aspirations are, please feel free to get in touch with me. Please feel free to get in touch with any other officers of the university, including Professor Davinder Singh. I hope you have a good, insightful, engaging, interactive 2 days with us today. And I'm sure it'll be about, exchange of ideas that's absolutely required at this juncture. So thank you very much. Over to you, Kakul.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I'd request Professor Manoj Arora, sir, Vice Chancellor here at BMU. He has more than 34 years of teaching and research experience and a nearly equal experience in academic administration across India, UK, and USA. He works in the area of remote sensing, geographic information system, digital image classification, among many others. So please address the gathering.
Thank you, Kakul. My dear students, budding entrepreneurs, innovative minds, and my colleagues, thank you for being part of Propel Pitchfest 2020. As my colleagues have just said, these are difficult and testing times for all of us as we fight the invisible enemy. I hope that you and your families are safe and healthy, and that you are keeping your spirits high, keeping safe, maintaining good health, and keeping yourself happy. And that's what we can do in today's circumstances. I, on behalf of personal behalf and on behalf of whole BMU fraternity, welcome you all to this fest of minds and brains. You know, as a country, we are one of the largest world economies. We have a land of huge natural resources. We have the highest demographic dividend, as Davinder talked about it. And we have excellent talent. But we ranked in 50s in Global Innovation Index in 2019, as per the report published by Cornell University and the UN World Intellectual Property Organization. No doubt, it is significant improvement by 50 places over what we were in 2012. However, we have a long way to go to improve on the performance of India in research and innovation to prepare the right kind of human capital. I was also reading a report of the World Bank which says that 2/3 of our research and innovation comes from the R&D institutions in the country. About 1/4 comes from the public and private sector industries, and less than 3% from the universities. Why this is so? We need to ponder over. Barring a few IITs and IIMs, the real technological innovations are not seen. We may call ourselves a Jugaad community, but universities do need to gear up to inculcate the habit of innovation in the minds of students and faculty. Let me also talk about what we are doing in this space, some of which has already been told by Vishal and Davinder. As you all know, that our university is founded by the hero group of industry. Shri BML Munjal ji was the greatest of the entrepreneurs which the country has seen post-independence. Therefore, all the sanskaras of the family have been inherited in the university itself. We have picked up our activities in innovation and entrepreneurship since last year. Clearly, entrepreneurship is in our genes, and therefore we believe that we are different. In fact, we have traversed a long way during 7 years of our stay and has established our name through state-of-the-art infrastructure, quality students, highly qualified faculty, innovative pedagogy, focused research and development, and distinctive industrial and foreign institutions partnerships. Though we still call ourselves a startup university and are evolving. We have created, as Vishal said, and is led by him, Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. We call it I2E. It has 4 major components: Propel, the incubator; Center for Inclusive Innovation, supported by Imperial College London; Mr. George Go Chair on Innovation and Entrepreneurship; and 2 students' clubs, which are involved in activities related to entrepreneurship. Professor Devinder may talk about Propel, our incubator, at some point of time, but I'm delighted to share that we have been selected for Atal Community Innovation Center by the Niti Aayog. Professor Davinder Singh happens to be the CEO of ACIC, and he can be reached out for more details on ACIC. We were among the 25 institutions out of 300 institutions who have been selected this year. The ACIC will also start functioning under the aegis of I2E. We, as Vishal said, we have set out our 5-year agenda of I2E, and there will be many things around teaching, research, consultancy, new courses, and academic programs. So much so that eventually we need to graduate to a university of entrepreneurship. Through these humble beginnings, we want to create an entrepreneurial environment and create a spirit of innovation in all students, irrespective of any discipline. In November 2019, we conducted our first version of pitch competition called Propel 19, where 100 startups from within and outside the country participated. 30 startups were shortlisted and mentored. Out of these, 15 were asked to pitch for their businesses in front of renowned angel investors and venture capitalists. These were awarded. The 3 were awarded finally, where many others were picked up by the investors. Last year, we also conducted National Smart India Hackathon in software supported by AICT. In fact, last year we achieved 5-star rating for the work done during 2019-20 academic year. We were among the top 10% of the institutions which have Institute of Innovation Councils in India. As you know, Atal ranking of Atal ranking of institutions on innovations achievements is an initiative of Ministry of Education to systematically rank all major higher educational institutions and universities in India on indicators related to innovation and entrepreneurship development. In the year 2020, we have been ranked and placed under Band B, which is 26th to 50th rank in the category of self-funded private universities. So we believe that we are on the right path. Many of our alumni have turned into successful entrepreneurial ventures. We are confident that in the years to come, many more of our graduates would be having their own entrepreneurial ventures and make a positive impact for not just for themselves, but the society as well. Currently, we are supporting about 10 startups in our incubator. A number of existing students have enrolled for our mentorship program in the incubator. We also teach courses like design thinking, critical reasoning, innovation, and entrepreneurship as electives to all the students. We also have a specialization of family business. I, however, believe that these courses cannot be taught purely in the classrooms. These courses need to be practiced. Every day, there should be one activity or the other when it comes to the real pedagogy of entrepreneurship. I also believe that in these courses, 70% of the time should be given to experts who would engage students with the students. Friends, India has a huge potential to innovate. As I said earlier, we are Jugadi people and innovate every day in one way or the other. We just need to organize ourselves and then see the change. Government is also supportive, fortunately, as they have realized that this is the way to go. COVID, in fact, has acted like a catalyst to think differently. After COVID, more challenges, but new opportunities will evolve. We need to embrace this change and encash upon the opportunities. Our innovative and entrepreneurial mindset will now be put to test. India has enough potential in villages and communities, and there is a huge scope for social entrepreneurship. So get ready to dive into the world of innovation and entrepreneurship. The innovators, especially the youth who are creative, passionate, and driven, can provide the solutions. It is important to provide them with the enabling environment, access to technology, and encourage them to take risks. This will then lead to better and more impactful solutions. Propel Pitchfest21 is one such platform provided by us to encourage the student startups and provide them opportunities to grow their entrepreneurial teams, dreams, and journey. I'm sure that you all are going to have fun today and tomorrow through masterclass, pitching competitions, investors clinics, and other activities. Lastly, I would like to put on record the efforts put in by my colleagues, in particular Professor Davinder Singh, Professor Vishal, each member of the Institute Innovation Council, our adjunct faculty, our partners, our sponsors, galaxy of panelists, BMU faculty, staff, and students in making Propel Pitchfest21 to happen, even during these difficult and challenging times. Thank you all, the participants, from the core of my heart to become part of this fest, even though virtually. Have a good time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. May I now request, please, if we can play the video of our partner's message, please. Moving forward, we have a very exciting panel. Moving forward, we have a very first panel discussion on the topic investors and founders succeeding together. On the panel, we have put together two pair of founders and investors. Our first pair consists of Mr. Anmol Jaggi, co-founder at Blue Smart Electric Mobility, and he has previously launched at Gensol Renewable Energy. Mr. Rohit Chahana, managing partner at Sarcha Advisors. He is acknowledged as Top Angel Investor 2020 India by Forbes. Also an investor in Mr. Jaggi's venture at Blue Smart Electric Mobility. A second pair consists of Mr. Rohan M. Ganpati, CEO and CTO, Bellatrix Aerospace. He's also Forbes 30 under 30 India and Asia, which he got when he was just 22 years old. Along with him, we have Mr. Jatan Desai, managing partner at Inflexa Ventures and general partner at Parampara Capital. He is also the investor for Bellatrix Aerospace. To moderate this session, we have Dr. Vishal Talwar sir from BML. Before we start this session, may I please request the attendees, if they have any questions whatsoever, you can post them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Over to you, sir.
Thanks very much, Kakul. When Professor Davinder Singh asked me to moderate this particular panel, I kind of jumped to it because this particular topic is rather close to my heart, and being able to get people who've been there, done that, and a kind of a dyad. So what Kapil was trying to explain was today we have people who, so we have investors on one side and we have founders on the other of startups who are actually engaged with each other in terms of advice, in terms of investment. And of course, it's always a good idea to know and learn from them about what their understanding is. How are things? Is it a marriage made in heaven? Is it, how do you kind of succeed together? So it's something that, I am very, very looking forward to. And I'm sure all of you today are also looking forward to it. And I'm sure a number of you have questions. You can always, mention those questions in the Q&A box. And obviously we'll take them. The idea today, of course, is that, for the first 25, 30 minutes, we'll be looking at a bit of a discussion. We'll be talking, every panelist, every esteemed panelist will provide their insight for about 4 to 5 minutes on how do you kind of succeed together. There'll be a bit of a discussion around the points that are raised by every one of the esteemed panelists. And thereafter, and this was a suggestion made by every one of the panelists, that they would really want to engage and interact with every one of you to understand your thoughts, and that's where the real learning is. The real learning is in the interaction and the engagement with all of you. So without necessarily wasting that much more time, let's very quickly, I'll want to introduce the esteemed panelists. Mr. Rohit Chahana first. A very long and illustrious career in the corporate world, more than 36 years, having worked in organizations such as Hero, Corporate, ran Baxi. Someone in his second innings, in a way, is the managing partner of Sarcha Advisors, an award-winning angel investor. In fact, in 2020, Forbes referred to him as one of the top angel investors in India. His secret mantra, in a way, and something that he's very eloquent about and expresses a lot, is this concept of Dil Se investing. And then I'm sure he'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward. In the last few years, he's invested in over 30 startups, including Blue Smart. So when we talk about Mr. Anmol Jaggi, Blue Smart, essentially, he's a co-founder of Blue Smart. Apart from that, there are particular startups which you may have heard of, Style.me, Josh Talks, as well as Truly Madly. So these are the startups that he has mentored, guided, and of course, invested in as well. Next, we have Mr. Anmol Jaggi, who's co-founder, as I mentioned, Blue Smart Electric Mobility, and founder at Gensol Renewable Energy Group, someone who really believes in the power, sustainability, and the commercial opportunity that is renewable energy. At Blue Smart, Anmol is building India's largest and most responsible B2C electric mobility business. Some of you who are familiar in the Delhi NCR area may have come across these white electric completely taxis you may have seen with the logo Blue Smart. and he's someone who's wanting to make BlueSmart India's fastest growing, and in fact, it currently is India's fastest growing all-electric ride-sharing platform. Some years ago, he was awarded Business World's Young Entrepreneur of the Year award. He's still, of course, young, but this was about 10 years back. We next have Sri Jatin Desai, someone who I have known for some time. We first met face-to-face in those days when we could possibly meet face-to-face in 2019 when he came along for a first Propel Pitchfest. He's managing partner at Inflexor Ventures and general partner at Parampara Capital. By the way, Inflexor invests in very deep, emerging tech, innovative, early-stage companies across various sectors. That's what brings in, Mr. Rohan Ganapathy today, who's, CEO and CTO of Bellatrix Aerospace. But of course, for Inflexor, they're not only looking at space, they're not looking at, they're also looking at agri-tech, fintech, health tech, edtech, and cybersecurity spaces. With a lot of immense experience, someone who's been in the financial sector at places such as Bank of America and DSP Merrill Lynch. I really look forward to listening to him. We then have Mr. Rohan Ganapathy. As I mentioned earlier, he's the CEO and CTO of Bellatrix Aerospace. He's also a Forbes 30 under 30 India and Asia entrepreneur. He's an aeronautical engineer by profession. His specialization is spacecraft propulsion, rocket engineering, things that I'm sure he'll be able to explain because I have less orientation towards this, but things which absolutely very different to what we usually talk about when we talk about startups, when we talk about entrepreneurial ventures. But I'm sure he'll be able to tell us more about it. As founding director of Bellatrix, he's someone who's responsible for development of liquid propellant rocket engines and in-space propulsion systems. So absolutely. So the whole pantheon of panelists that we have today, varied experience, varied ability to contribute and impact society. Without necessarily wasting more time, let's have a discussion with them. So the overall topic, of course, is investors and founders succeeding together. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll have 4 to 5 minutes of every panelist talking a little bit about their insight and how do you actually succeed, their philosophy of how they look at investments, how they look at startups, how they look at their own business. In this case, obviously, if you are someone who's founding your own company. So we'll do that for about 4 or 5 minutes each. Then have a few questions, and maybe then we'll request for questions that the audience might have. So thank you, Mr. Chanana. Pleasure to have you here today.
Hi, those. So this is the youngest one going first, which is, in my version 2.0, I call myself a 21-year-old student of philosophy, psychology, and digital technology. And, this is all driven, the version 2 is driven by higher purpose, where I have documented what is my higher purpose. And I will quickly get you to, what do I mean by Dil Se investing, because it was important to share the philosophy behind Dil Se investing. So, there is a higher purpose of hasu aur hasaun sare jag mein khushiyan phailao, right? And I'm sure people will understand Hindi. And that to me is the key, because whenever I'm talking to the founders, I ask them, what is your higher purpose, right? Because if there is an alignment between your personal purpose and the company purpose, the friction is going to be that much lower. Second and most important piece that I have learned from my mother, my grandmother, my family, my wife, and all of those people is, focus on values. So values are the foundation, including Brij Mohan ji. I've spent almost, everybody says when he's spending time with Brij Mohan ji that he gives us the maximum time, right? So most people who have interacted with him will have the same feeling that he's, truly different for us, and he believes in us, right? And he's very close to us. And that's something which 100, 500,000 people will say about him, that he's very close to us. So my values are, fairness, acceptance, imagination, trust, and humility. I will not go into the details of defining this, given the constraint of time. But what I have learned is, the power of same page. So anything that you want to do, you must define it. So for example, the humility definition was defined by the group chairman for me, which is Brit Mohan ji. He said, "Beta Hindi mein likh loge?" So I said, "Nahi, Hindi mein to shayad nahi likh paun, but tutti futti Hindi mein likh lunga." So he said, "Okay, then why don't I write it for you?" This was on 2nd of January, when he was coming from Hero Honda factory, where some Guruji had given a definition of humility. I started meeting with him by saying that you are a symbol of humility. He would have been almost around 86, 87 that time. And he said, "Beta, mainu te humility da matlab aaj pata lag gaya." So I've got to know the meaning of humility today. So he defined it for me as samta, mamta, shamta, namrata, right? So this is why, so humility may mean different to you, different to others. And that's one lesson that I share with the founders. So Hasu or sound coupled with the values. I will now get to where does this whole animal of startup come into play? So I can't spread this happiness all around. It is the founders who have who have a very different mindset, who are adaptable to new ideas, new challenges. And, they will listen to you and they will teach you as well. So, so there comes the philosophy of Dil Se investing. So I believe people who are driven by values, have higher purpose, and can take this journey forward are my real founders. So and therefore it has to have a Dil Se connect with me, the Dil Se connect at an individual level and Dil Se connect at a business level. And the philosophy of Dil Se invest comes from, I spent at least 1 to 1.5 hours. With Anmol, it was maybe 5 hours, right? With his brother was 3 hours. With Puneet Goyal, another 3 to 5 hours before we decided to invest. So 10 hours, when I talk to the founders, they say that, why do you do like this, right? Why do you have to spend so much time? People just come on straight to spreadsheets. So I said, those Dil Se connect nahi hai, to koi fayda nahi hai. Because since I am a 21-year-old, my goal is not to earn just money. My goal is also to have intellectual stimulation. And this is something which, I have said it publicly on the forums that I have attended with Anmol. मैं इसको बोलता हूँ, दोस्त मेरे को तू इतने पैसे क्यों दे रहा है कोचिंग के? मैं तो तेरे से सीख रहा हूँ, right? So that is who we are. So, I built a Dil Se connect with Anmol, basically understanding their bio and chemistry. Bio and chemistry. Bio is the DNA, aspiration, the values, right? Business acumen, all of these soft aspects. And chemistry is what is the ecosystem saying about you, right? Having done that, I spent barely, let's say, so if I've spent 5 hours on evaluating a business or evaluating a business, 80% of the time or 85% of the time is spent around just the bio and chemistry. I want to understand their life experiences. 1 se 1.5, 2 ghante, I will just listen to their life experiences. So there have been times when people have cried while sharing their experiences, good, bad, ugly, whatever, right? Some of them they want to cherish, some of which they want to forget. So, the physics and maths, I spend the least amount of time, even though spreadsheets talk to me. Spreadsheets actually talk to me, right? So the interesting piece is that for spreadsheet, I just ask the founders, दोस्त कितना रनवे है आपके पास, इतना पैसा लोगे तो क्या होगा? And one of the things I will tell you about Anmol in a bit more detail, but since we are at this moment, because people are really worried about dilution. And here is my friend Anmol and his younger brother Puneet. They started off with the idea of diluting only 10%, but they said, "Paisa mil raha hai, le lo." Value creation is more important to me. So those are the belief systems. When you're talking to the founders, that's where you get those. So, the physics and maths is around the value proposition, the attractiveness of opportunity, ability to compete, what is the scale, risk, etc. But recognizing fully well that their knowledge is 500 times more than me. Okay. So I have to understand their their integrity, their ethos, their competence, And then I will just go out and back them. There have been situations where Anmol and I may have disagreed on a point of view, which would have been 1 out of 20 cases. But I will always respect the founder because of his knowledge. So let me very quickly come back to, why did I choose Anmol? So Anmol comes from a, family of, army people. So his father was a lieutenant general. And the reason he aligned with me was, he says, sir, मेरे को तो business इतना बड़ा कभी देखा नहीं है. तो मेरे को एक आदमी चाहिए. If my father was there, he would have supported me. So why don't you just come and join us? So while I was talking to him, I could understand his business acumen. I'm actually become his clone. So I know कि ये सुबह 4 बजे उठता है, 7 बजे तक अपनी सारी मेल्स वेल्स खत्म कर देता है. उसके बाद अगर इसकी मीटिंग्स होगी तो ये फोन नहीं उठाएगा. Right? So those are all the known things. He's tremendously execution focused. And then despite all the challenges that you would have seen in COVID, his business got down to, almost down by 90%. And for some time it was stopped. But did I ever see any worry about him? The answer is no. He used that time to do something constructive for ki achhe din aayenge, right? So he also has a 10-year record. Happy-go-lucky is what I've already shared. The first time when I met with him, the humility, piece, I think I'm overstretching, but I'll try and conclude in 1 minute. When I met with him the first day, it happened to be my birthday. And I was really touched. I just told them that I need to leave by 3:30. This was a pitch session by them. And I got a cake. They said, sir, you can't go. 3:30 baje aapne bola tha. This is a cake, so you have to cut the cake and go. The second founder, Puneet, is full of energy, dreamer, storyteller, high on aspiration. आप उसे बोलेंगे कि कल प्रधानमंत्री से मिलना है, वो उनको भी चिट्ठी लिख देगा, right? So निडर type का आदमी है. This combination of Puneet and Anmol is a deadly combination. So I'll stop here.
Great, thank you very much. I think execution focused, value focused, humility. I guess these are traits that you really, really admire, and I guess that's the reason why you're working with Blue Smart. Anmol, any points that you would like to make? Your philosophy, working.
Just from a time perspective, sir, 4-5 minutes?
4-5 minutes, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Rohit, sir, for the kind words. And so, yes, I just want to bring out a fun fact before we kind of move ahead. Apart from Survam Ventures, the other common investor between Biletrix and Blue Smart is Deepika Padukone. So that's like a fun fact for the students and others who are listening, that so Deepika Padukone invests in taxi companies and she also invests in rocket companies. So that's the fun fact. But just to start, I think in my life, I've actually valued the highest amount of. So there are investors. You have angel, you have Series A, B, C, D, E, F, whatever. IPO. So in my opinion, I value the most to the investors who come in absolutely early, because these are the guys who are actually betting on you as a person. There is no business out there at that time. So most of angel investors, most of even Series A investors actually see nothing out there excepting for a presentation or some thoughts that how you will disrupt the world or how you will create magic. And I think that kind of a belief is very difficult, is very difficult to cultivate. And I always wonder. Now I had the opportunity to listen to some business plans myself. Then I absolutely wonder of how people get so much conviction to write a check just listening to a presentation or just listening to some thoughts. So my kind of highest, if I have to salute somebody in the complete financing ecosystem, it is the angel investor and the Series A investor who comes in. B, C, D guys, probably CDE guys, they are more or less, you've seen businesses built, cash is flowing. It's much easier for them to take a decision. But my kind of congratulations and my kind of most honor for the kind of angel and Series A guys, because who actually just come in when you have nothing but a thought, and they give you the capital to grow. So that's been so that's always been my thoughts. And what also I think, and this is one of the other things that my co-founder Puneet Goyal always keeps saying, is that if you look at angel investors, your angel investors are actually your unpaid employees. So you actually you can go to them for anything. You can ask them, sir, आज आपको मेरे लिए 50 लोगों से connection बनाना है, आज आप मेरे को 10 investors से connect करिए, आप मेरा business plan review करिए, आप मेरा कुछ, if you have some tech guys, then you ask them to review your tech stack. You basically, and for what, and they're not going to charge you anything, and they're going to do absolutely a wonderful job on of this. And this is something which is something very great about having a very, very nice angel investors and nice on your board. People, I think, and I think Rohit sir was mentioning about dilution, etc. So when we had set out for our for our seed round, we wanted to raise 10 crores. We ended up raising 21. In our second round, we wanted to raise 35. We ended up raising 54. But I think what we have to look is that the quality of people who came on board, and probably I would also want to share with some of our young listeners who are saying is that if your company is actually, I have not seen, and maybe I'm wrong, but there are very, very few companies who have become very large where founders actually have a share in double digits. I think most of the companies in today's world actually have founders are down to single digits, and that is where you will actually end up at. So why worry too much about dilution, and you just think about, I think I've been hearing this phrase for 10 years, but over the last 2-3 years practiced it myself, which is smaller piece of a larger pie. And I think that helps us make a decision, which is to say that, if there is money coming in from the right set of people, you just say yes to it, and don't say that मेरे को तो 35 ही चाहिए था, मेरे को 50. मतलब हमने 35, we raised 35 crores instead of 35 crores, we raised 54 crores. There is lockdown 1 which happened, and then lockdown 2 which happened. Now, who knew all of this is going to happen, and we would need so much more cash? But that always helps. So if there is right kind of people, and like I mentioned, the more important criteria is the right kind of people. So if there is right kind of people giving you the right side of money, I think just take it. Don't think too much about it. I will also want to share, in my experience, what some of the mistakes that we have done with not in this venture, some of the previous ventures which we did, that we were not very upright and very we did not show the bad part of our business, or where we were falling to some of our early investors, and not for this venture, for an earlier one. And I think that kind of hindered our progress itself. And I would request that all our young folks who are listening to this conversation, I think, and since then, I think we have at BlueSmart have been pretty much appreciated time and again for the quality of information sharing that we now do with our investors, and whether it's monthly updates or quarterly updates and everything. I think we've gone, and it can have the worst of the metrics and it can have the best of the metrics, but we have been kind of very upfront in sharing them. So I would say that that is one mistake that if somebody asked me, Anmol, what is that one mistake that you would want to rectify 10 years back? I would say that, I would probably want to share everything good and bad about our business with everybody who's invested or even who's not invested. But just to take their feedback and try to, because the moment we start to share what is not going right is when we see a lot of cumulative brains coming and attacking that problem, and that is actually very helpful. The other thing that I also wanted to mention, because again, a lot of young people may be listening to this, is that don't take too much stress about, saying that I have to, when I pitch to an investor, I have to get a yes. I think don't think too much about it. A lot of investors might not be your sector focus. A lot of investors might not be your round focus. A lot of investors might not be your geography focus. A lot of investors have already invested a certain percentage of their money in certain in a particular type, in your type of a startup, and they don't want to take more exposure to it. So don't take too much tension if you pitch to like 10 investors and none of them say yes to you, and you think of yourself like a baller. So you have, as a baller in a one-day international, you have 60 balls to ball, and in those 60 balls you have to take maybe 2 or 3 wickets. What I mean by 2 or 3 wickets from a founder perspective is that you just need 2 or 3 investors to commit to you for your Series A, B round. You don't need 15. You don't have to take a wicket on every ball. So just keep practicing and just ensure that you're always pitching it right. And what I mean by pitching it right is that as a bowler, you are always going in and bowling, and you will see that if you are bowling well, you will take 2 or 3 wickets, and you will have 2 or 3 term sheets with you. So don't take too much tension if you have pitched to 50 guys and you have heard no from maybe 40 of them because of one reason or the other. There might be the 41st guy and the 51st guy and the 61st guy or the 101st guy who might actually come and invest with you. So don't take too much tension with no's. I think no's is not a problem. if you stop trying, that is the bigger problem. So I would like to just share some of these experiences.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I think thanks for being very transparent. The good and the bad. Of course, smaller piece, larger pie. I guess we're quite obsessed with valuations. You're obsessed with dilution. So you're absolutely right. I think where do you want to go? Where do you want to arrive at? What's your overall goal? A lot of those things will be important. Of course, very anecdotal. What you mentioned about Deepika Padukone and the investment in Bellatrix as well as in Blue Smart. I guess both are in some form of transportation. One very much more futuristic, and the other one's a little bit more accessible right now. So thank you very much, Mr. Desai. What are your points?
Sure. Thanks, Vishal. So of course, I'm going after Rohit. So he has set a high mark, but I belong to the institutional breed of investors. So it's a little bit more cut and dry for us, unfortunately. But having said that, at Inflexor, both me and my co-founding partners, we were serial entrepreneurs in our previous lives, where we have built and scaled and sold companies both in India and the US before coming back here. And then we got into technology and operations executive roles, where we delivered for global clients. Then we finally did angel investments. And then phase 2 of our life is when we actually set up the tech VC fund in Parampara and Inflexor, as Alji mentioned. So I thought I'll set that context that we have been on the founder side of the table multiple times. So there is a certain amount of empathy that comes in, which you may not find with all investors, because many of them perhaps have never run a business, right? So I think that's the context I wanted to set. As far as we are concerned, so we try to back founders who are smarter than us, obviously in their respective areas of expertise. They have the passion, the conviction, the execution capabilities. And what is very important to have in founders as a quality is, have that flexibility as required, if we need to pivot or, tweak the approach in response to market dynamics or any other such, dynamic circumstances, which will happen in any founder's journey, certainly. So usually we end up spending, 3-4 months with founders between the first meeting until the time all the institutional formalities of investments are completed. So it gives us enough time actually to evaluate each other. So I believe that it's very important for founders also to evaluate potential investors who are going to come in, right? Because it's a 5-year relationship at a minimum, right? Generally, investor and founder, especially institutional investors, and we have to go through the ups and downs together. So it's equally important for founders to evaluate us as it is for us to evaluate the founders. Because in the startup, the founder team becomes a very important criteria for the investment decision, right? And then what we bring to the table once that is done is, we provide the capital. But fortunately, nowadays in India, there is enough capital available, right? So that is not a problem anymore, right? Earlier, maybe 5-7 years ago, that was a problem. There is a lot of money chasing good Indian startups, good founders, right? But more than the capital, right? What we believe we bring to the table for the founders is, we lend our experience of scaling up, providing global market context, help wherever the founders need us to step in, right? Ultimately, it's the founders' company. They run the company day to day, right? Investors are there, to help when they seek help. And then, of course, people like Rohan, right, who are very typical, for our startup founders, his age group. Typically our founders are in that mid to high 20s average age group. So founders like Rohan have checked all the above boxes, right, before we have entered into an investment relationship. And, we know things are working well when Rohan or Yashas, his co-founder, they pick up the phone and, call us whenever they need to use us as sounding boards. If there are a couple of options, take the advice, right? So it's important, for that founder investor meetings to also happen just outside the formal board meetings, the monthly review meetings, and so on and so forth, right? And, before investing in Bellatrix, and Rohan will agree with this, right? It took us a little while because space tech was a new area, both for overall in the Indian startup ecosystem as well as for us as investors. So it took us more than the usual 4-5 months, to work with them. And, it's absolutely amazing. Of course, we don't have time today, but some of the hustling that Rohan and Yashas have done, with the ISRO chairman at that time, right? And to show their innovation and their, IP that they have created in India is just absolutely amazing, right? It's very, very impressive and inspiring, for somebody to do that at that age. So that's, one important aspect, and the passion and the conviction, to do what they want to do. So, it's all that, works out well ultimately for a founder investor relationship. And ultimately, as I'd mentioned in the intro, unlike many investors, we have been on their side of the table. So whenever decisions have to be made, or there are conflicts or there are issues, we always put ourselves in their shoes, right? Because we have already also experienced that, right? And when you do that, during crisis management, or even during the time when we were handling the pandemic, right? This was a clear black swan event, right? Once in a lifetime for most of us. So, you have to definitely handhold, and investors and founders had to work very closely. And, very glad that, none of our portfolio companies went down, or, everybody's doing fine, so which was a good sort of a win-win situation, for all of us. So I guess, to end it on a lighter note, and I think Vishalji referred to it earlier, founder-investor or a relationship ultimately has many aspects of a marriage, right? There are expectations, there is trust and transparency involved, and heck, there is also a initial honeymoon period, right? But the key is, to tide over that initial honeymoon period, and ultimately keeping in mind, that all of us have to work in the interest of the company. If the company does well, everybody wins, investors and founders, so that's the philosophy with which we operate. So, that would be it from my side in the initial intro, I guess. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I think both parties obviously need to evaluate each other. That's something that is very, very important, and something that needs to be mentioned many a times. The evaluation may be right. Sometimes the evaluation may not be necessarily up to the mark. But yeah, I think amazing points. Thanks very much, Mr. Desai. Rohan, over to you. Maybe a minute on what is your overall business, a little bit for a lot of the audience here, and then maybe your philosophy, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for having me today on board. I feel blessed to be a part of this amazing panel. And before I start, giving my bits, I'll just in 2 words what Bellatrix is. It's not the Harry Potter character, which everybody confuses Bellatrix to be. So we named the company after a star in the constellation Orion. The idea is pretty simple. The dream which we had, I don't want others to kind of link it with any science fiction, fantasy or something like that. The biggest employer in India is the software industry. And there is only one industry today, which is, you can call it truly global, which basically is the software industry. But which other industry has the potential to go global, employ on a global scale? So it is basically the space industry. And space from the year 2000 onwards has been diversifying into the private sector. So yeah, in the year 2000, I was in my 2nd standard or something, but 2010, you could actually see the results of the privatizing space. There was Elon Musk, there was Jeff Bezos, very successful space entrepreneurs coming up in the US. Our idea is to reduce the cost of accessing space, and most of the technology, as you know, is very restrictive. It's not easily accessible, so it has longer gestation period. So we thought we wanted to build an engine for a satellite, a propulsion system for satellite, where you can increase the return on investment by carrying more payload rather than carrying more fuel. So that's the company's business philosophy. We are a space transportation company right now, and we give propulsion or engine services, just like how Tata buys engines from Fiat in Italy. So we develop electric and chemical propulsion systems for both satellites and rockets. In 2 words, that's what we do. And it's been 2015 we incorporated as a company. It's been a good journey so far. And coming back to investor or investee relationship, in our field like space, it's very capital intensive. So you will not get to see your return on investment very quickly like other companies do. And in India, we are the first company to get a VC investment. And it has been a very good journey for us. It took a lot of time, as Jatin explained. But what we need to understand as founders is, I think everybody will agree. Finally, it is the founders who decide which investor they want on board, whom they are comfortable to work with. Because something like space, because people need to be very patient. We as founders have the passion and perseverance, but not necessarily others. And to understand what we do is also very difficult. So we had other offers on the table, multiple people who actually liked us, wanted to invest. We went with Parampara team and requested them to lead. The only reason is because we felt comfortable with them. So it's not just a value addition in terms of money, which they bring in, because see, we in terms of business, it's pretty new. Space business itself is a new area. So it's an uncharted territory in India especially. And we at that time when we were meeting Jatin, we were telling space law will be passed by the government. This will be done, that will be done. Everything was in future tense. They believed in us. But now you can see the results. The government has privatized space. The government is asking ISRO to move everything to the private side because it's a $450 billion global industry. So that initial trust in us that, it's not science fiction, what they're talking is reality, and getting to that level and understanding what we do. So that's what makes you also feel comfortable. And as Jatin mentioned, they're in for the long term here. So it's very important, and we come with certain expertise. They have certain expertise. So everything, when you take a decision, it has to be together. So that's what we got through Jatin's first fund, Parampara, who led the round for Bellatrix. Of course, now we are on the road again to look for the Series A. But on the other hand, what I would like to tell others is, students who have ambitions to become entrepreneurs, that a passion alone is not sufficient. You need perseverance. Many people actually lack it, because we see many people even coming to us these days asking for some advice. So they get disheartened after 6 months, like we did so much, nothing came. But they have to understand that it's not like this. Perseverance is the key, is the only solution. And you have to meet a lot of investors before you choose somebody, because the questions which they ask, are you even ready to answer? So business doesn't have predefined steps, right? This is how you do, that is how you do. Every person, at the end, customer is your king. So how do you approach it? And is your business B2B or B2C or B2G? How do you deal with this? So it's all a learning curve. So it helps. So nowadays incubation centers are coming. Well, we started, these things were not there. I hope this learning curve will be helpful, like what you have at BML Munjal University. So that would help entrepreneurs, but this is very critical for them. And you have to be very transparent with your investor. That's one more thing. Do not try to hide, because initially we were a little hesitant. We also learned it the hard way, that certain things let us not tell, certain things we have to tell. But at the end, we got to know that unless you open up fully, you can't utilize their potential as well, because it has to be win-win for both of us. And a good thing about Jatin, he just listens everything, even though you're wrong, right? He listens. That patience is very important. No, I tell this, you do this, so that we didn't have. And in fact, we are very fortunate for their support, because, and that too, when they invested in us, we were in the development stage, right? So we had these products, we had an order from ISRO, but we had everything on the table. It was nothing like it was completed. At that stage, they came in. So because without their support, it wouldn't have been completed. So I'm happy to say now we are getting towards a space qualification this year. So you could see our engines in space this year. And that's my bit. So your proof idea to POC stage is very important. And after your proof of concept, please have a partner, in my case, Yashas, because you need a person who is 180-degree opposite to you. They make a good team, as Rohit sir or Anmol was mentioning about their partner. Same thing here. So both of us, myself, Yashas, we are completely opposite people, but we balance out, debate and balance out. That's also a good success mantra to a company. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Very, very relevant. I think I believe you had other options as well, possibly, but you went in for the option that you felt would give you most, value, in the larger sense. So, great, and I wish you all the best for this year's launch as well. One thing that you highlighted, I'm sure we can start the Q&A with that particular question, and while the people are asking these questions on the chat box. You brought up an interesting point. I was reading a research which suggested that this whole thing around wanting to create a group of founders rather than an individual, maybe it's at times counterproductive, right? So if you're individual entrepreneurs as well, and you're happy to go along and start, that's also okay. So is it always the case that you really need co-founders? Can you not go it? This obviously is to the entire panel. If the entire panel can answer this question, and we can start the Q&A round from that. Do we need co-founders? A basic question. Yeah.
So I'll start with this question. It's a very interesting question. You also need a good co-founder and good founding team. So sadly, the founding team cannot be on the board, but you also need a good founding team because one thing, India should actually transition from being a service provider to actually provider of some technology of sort globally. So we only look at a large volume, low value kind of products these days. But when will we transition into high value, low volume kind of markets, which other developed countries have actually built, right? So when you look at this, a founder's time, for example, I only look at technology aspect of it because that takes a lot of time discussing with your advisors, with your team and all. So to actually handle the other aspect of a company, because you need funds coming in, you need a business. So actually you need that burden to be taken out of you, and so that you also need a co-founder who does that and who's passionate about doing that. Because he should not be someone who's also a technologist, but just that he's founder, he's looking into it. So it's very important for any technology-based company to have a co-founder with him, because he'll only balance it out, he or she. And in your sad days, you need somebody to actually pat your back and bring them up. So that's where the founding team also comes into the picture.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I just want to add a comment here. The co-founders or the founding team have to be clones of each other. They need to have complementary skills. And Rohan, to your point, it is my personal belief, even though when I started off my business as a managing partner of Sarcha Advisors, I was looking for a coach, right? And I strongly believe in that in bad times or good times, trade-offs are definitely required. This is where the experience comes into play. So my belief around the advisor is that he has to be your dost, so he has to be your clone. And all your 3, 4, 5 team members or co-founders have to be your clone with complementary skills. Because if that is not so, you won't succeed. That's my personal belief. And today is a time of networking, and each one brings with them their own networks, right? The crowdsourcing. So to me, access versus ownership. So access is as important as the ownership. So just those couple of points.
Right. Thank you. Let's go to the questions. So there's one question by Raghav, and he says, how should we train our mind to develop entrepreneurial skills right from school level? I guess this is something which it's been asked. A lot of us tell us, from the school level, you have to start building these kind of skills. Anyone would like to comment on this? Anmol, maybe?
Yeah, sure. So I think I'll just share my bit of thoughts on this. So I've been lucky, and there was another question which is there that, we are students, and will students get investors, etc. I personally, for me, I graduated from University of Petroleum in 2007. The first company that I got incorporated in 2005. So 2007 is when I graduated. 2005 is when the first company got incorporated. And before I was out of college, we were a team of 10, 12 people already having a decent 7-digit revenue. First, the question around, which is to say that do investors actually back you when you are at college, etc. I think that's a straight yes. Doesn't really matter whether you are at college or if your idea has merit and you can do it, doesn't really matter. At least that's been my personal experience, but happy to hear maybe Jatin sir's opinion on it. But my personal experience is that at least on the angel side, you might not get an institutional investor while you're still at college, but there is huge amount of angel money which is there in this world. If your idea has merit, you will get it. But coming to the fact that, how do you train yourself for being entrepreneurs? I think the training for entrepreneurship, in my opinion, at least in my case, was only the hunger to do it. And I am not able to recollect any out of a lot of friends or other family members, etc., etc. If I look at those guys who became entrepreneurs and those guys who didn't become entrepreneurs, and if I look at it, I think it's more of a inbuilt thing which is there. I think, in my opinion, it's like a God's gift to you, or you're inborn with it, and I think it is very tough to kind of accumulate this skill, if I can use the word. So I would say that, but that's personally my opinion on how whether you will can you get trained for entrepreneurship. I would say that I would say that it's tough to get trained for entrepreneurship. But having said that, my personal opinion, I might be the only one on the panel who says like that.
No, I think that's a fair point. I'll just add a high level sort of cultural point to it, right? I think we have to get away from criticizing failure or being embarrassed about failure as a culture, and additionally the obsession that we have with marks and rankings and percentages. I think it just puts us in a different path, right? So unless you learn to fail and take failure well, right, it is very hard to become good entrepreneurs. It's a very, very tough road, ultimately. So that's a higher level sort of cultural point, right? Not individual.
Thank you. Let's maybe move on to one more question. So there's one particular question that Dev Das asks. I wonder if anyone can help here on the panel. Can one of the investors mentor on a handloom apparel startup? This obviously, in Dev's belief, is that this will help the problem that exists in the employment space. So very quickly, if there's anyone who could possibly do that, maybe someone from the team could connect with Dev. Maybe we can't recollect any particular names right now in the handloom space, but I'm sure we can get back to him later if we have as a panel. Does anybody recollect right now? Maybe we could take this later and let him know. Okay, great. So there's one more question Digvij is asking. So obviously he's asking about, Anmol is asking about the e-mobility space. And do we see a flurry of investments happening in this space going forward?
Yeah, so I would want to, before I talk, I would like to hear Rohit sir's opinion on it, because I think he knows more ESG investors than what I know. And I think a lot of ESG investors I know courtesy him only. So Rohit sir, your thoughts on ESG investments in e-mobility space, and then I'll share my thoughts.
So I'm personally very bullish about the mobility, more from an ESG perspective. And I always tell Anmol that I'm more bullish about his business than he would be about his business. So it is, there are fads at some point in time, but is it going to stay for long? The answer is yes, because the whole world is moving towards electric. Now, will the success happen in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years? I won't really comment on that. But earlier the talks were that 30%, 50% by 2035. Can it happen sooner? The answer is yes. The tailwinds are very, very strong. So I would say electric mobility. And if we keep getting these updates from our founder friend Puneet Goyal, and there are at least 50 ideas that I have seen funded, ranging from 15 million to close to $1 billion, right? And that's the flavor of the day. So, but more importantly, it is the, people have started believing in this story. Today, I may be, not as neutral, but as long as the grid becomes more green, the outcome of ESG will play a big role there. I think more importantly, it is also about, the mindset. So I'm just digressing to put in something interesting. This is about people, planet, and prosperity, right? That is the mantra that Anmol is using. So the other comment that I want to make is, if you are only chasing a fad, right, with no on-ground abilities to execute, it won't happen. So the starting philosophy is ESG is an added advantage, but your business model and the founders have to be right.
I think I have two parts to the answer. One, ESG, investing in electric mobility, is doing hand over fist. So there is tons and tons of money which is available from ESG for electric mobility, without any doubt. But I would also want to mention that not all ESG money is actually looking at electric mobility, because in ESG segment, S scores over E. So social scores over environment. And governance is a given, so leave aside the governance matter. If you are bad on it, nobody's touching you also. So let's leave aside the G part. G is a hygiene matter and nobody's talking of it. But you will see in the ESG side, if you will pick up 100 funds, 90 or 80 of them want to focus on the S of it and not the E of it. Luckily at BlueSmart, we are having a combination where we have an environmental impact and a societal impact with our driver partners and a unique asset financing model. So that's where we qualify for a lot of the ESG stuff. But if it was just about greenhouse gas emissions, then I would say that just saving greenhouse gas emissions is like, on the ESG front, is a lower priority. If you can mix a societal impact with that, I think you rank up.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for the answer. There's one question which I'm sure a lot of young budding startup enthusiasts wonder, is that if they have a product or a model or a service which is not very different from what already exists in the market or may have already launched before, should they go ahead? Maybe a brief answer to this. Jatin, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, because, there are obviously some Me Too models that have been successful, but, ideally there should be something unique or innovative, about it. And also it's very important for the market size pie to be large enough to have multiple successful players, right? It should not be a winner take all sort of market, right? But otherwise, there is no such rule, obviously, right? Many upcoming new companies doing similar thing as established legacy players have, they have been disrupted by them. So I think it's perfectly valid, but it requires, lot more work, I would say.
All right, great. And I guess the next question also, and the next question thereafter also kind of applies to you. Krishna's talking about the finance sector and how is it developing in the next 5 years. He wanted to develop a financial product. Any advice for Krishna? Jatin?
I think it's a financial product is a very generic term, but what I will say is, I think in terms of fintech, I think India has done phenomenally well in the last 5 to 7 years. I would put India, even in some cases, ahead of the US, right? In terms of the fintech disruption that has happened, right? China, of course, I rate as number one, but India and US, I think, some of the disruption and some of the innovation that we have done in India around overall fintech, using technology for the financial markets in general, whether it is the markets, the insurance sector, or payments, or banking, neo banking. So obviously there is a vast potential. And, so much so that, even some years back, I recollect one of the large bank CEOs mentioned, and, this is one of my favorite quotes being a technologist, that, in future, it will all be technology companies with a banking license. A bank will be a technology company with a banking license, not the other way around, right? But that is what is happening in all sectors, right? And financial sector, because, they have a lot of money, a lot of capital to invest in innovation, technology, it will always remain a very hot sector, right?
Great. I think Sushil asks one more question related to your area itself. How did you identify good tech startups? Maybe a few words on that.
Correct. I mean, to be a good tech startup, obviously you don't have to necessarily take VC money or anything like that, right? You can have a perfectly good tech company doing lifestyle kind of business and be successful and all that, right? So I'm assuming he's referring to companies that, that want to raise VC money. Because, there's no rocket science there for us, at least, we are a deep tech company. So besides the usual parameters that most other funds look for investment, like founders, market size, entry valuation, exit potential, one of the extra things that we look at is, the deep tech IP. So we evaluate IP very deeply. We at least want 2-3 years of lead time for anybody to copy, because ultimately, you throw smart people and money at any problem, they'll eventually solve it, right? So that's all 2-3 years, and then continuous product and technology IP improvement to keep the edge. And the second thing we look for is that you build in India, preferably have a SaaS software, right? The IP should reside in the SaaS software so that you can sell to the world, right? So that's the beauty of software, right? Particularly for SaaS platforms. So these are the two extra things that we look for.
Great, thank you. And one for the panel in general, how do you protect intellectual property, especially in our kind of context? Is there a possibility of protecting it? Some advice for Sanjana?
If I can take this question,
Sure, please.
there's no general way to protect your IP because, Elon Musk famously said SpaceX doesn't IP anything because the Chinese would anyway end up copying it and would come as a competition to us. But IPs, again, also is very critical because that's what is defining your company. So when you are at your pre-series A angel, series A to series B stage, IP is what brings value to the company until you start making revenues. But what needs to be IP'd and what can be kept as a trade secret is something where founders and investors should come together on a table and discuss. So everything I get, so unlike big corporations, even a small thing, okay, let us apply IP. But for a startup, what's important is how does that IP, transition into value proposition is something both investors and the founders should sit along and discuss. That's very important. And also constant innovation is the key because after 2-3, even though the patent has a 20-year lifetime, but after 2-3 years, somebody will be there who will look at it and try to do something different out of it, just cite the patent maybe. So constant innovation is also the key. If you just apply an IP and you cannot sit with it. So as Jatin mentioned, after 2-3 years, you have to ensure that the product which you have made has improved a certain level, or version 2, version 3 of it than the patent. So this clarity should be there before you go for IP. And before going for patent lawyers, what I would suggest is it is better you apply it on your own from personal experience.
So just a couple of points here. In order to build a sustainable advantage, as my friend said, we need to be a patent factory, right? So that is one side of it. And in terms of patent protection, I think there are times where we unknowingly put our product into the market. And please understand that if you have put your product into the market, there is no way you can copy, you can patent. So I would really encourage people to really understand when should I go for patent filing. I can do a provisional patent, I can do a complete patent, right? As soon as the idea comes to mind, just disagreeing with Rohan on the IP patent, the driver will always be us, right, as a founder. But the attorney will do the prior art search, come back to you, and I will then ask them that I need this patent, right? Give me ways around it. So they will give you some ways around it because you need to create the differentiation. Whether we like it or not, patent has a value. And, all investors love to see how many patents you have if you have one, right? That could be a differentiator. So patent and trademarks, can be a differentiating strategy to a limited extent.
Perfect. Thank you. I think we have time for just one last question, a brief answer to that. I guess this is something that kind of applies to many different startups, the social return on investment. So how does somebody kind of measure or calculate the metrics for this social return on investment? Anyone would like to take this up? Jatin, Anmol?
Yeah, so I don't have too much experience on how to compute social capital, but what I have in our conversation with a lot of ESG guys, what we keep hearing, like I mentioned, greenhouse gas is pretty easy. You can just quantify in tons of CO2 and tons of XY gases. But more impact, like I said, is about how many lives touched, how many employment that you created, how much of earnings were you able to give. I think those are some of the in I think when you one very important thing about also on the ESG side is that what was the negative impact that you created, and that is also another important aspect. So to reduce 100 tons of carbon dioxide, did you actually go and spend 80? So if you've done that, then you cannot call yourself as a 100-ton reduction. So you have to look in the complete life cycle of the product or life cycle of the service to come and say that this was the impact which was created. So I think, but like I mentioned, I'm not like a big expert on it. Maybe somebody else can explain it better. But what in our conversations, people are definitely looking forward to, the on the greenhouse gas pretty easy, but more on the employment, lives touched, how many lives were you able to get out of poverty, etc. I think those are some of the very important factors.
Sure. Thank you. I think this has been a very good discussion. I'm very conscious of the time. We've kind of 2 minutes over. So thanks very much. Absolute pleasure to listen to every one of you. I'm sure everyone in the audience has taken certain advice, and of course will take it seriously, whatever they're planning to do in terms of their startups or otherwise. I'm sure there are certain questions that we've not been able to answer. So if you could, if the team, Kakul, if you could arrange the team to maybe kind of compile those particular questions, we'll see if we can get back to the respective views, because some questions were rather specific. So, we can do that later, but thank you so much. Absolute pleasure. Rohit ji, Jatin, Rohan, Anmol, thanks very much for an amazing conversation. Pleasure to connect and look forward to seeing you again. So thanks very much, everyone. Thank you.
Lord, thanks.
God bless you. Thank you. Bye.
So before you leave, can I please request all the panelists to keep their videos on so we can take a picture? Great. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the amazing session.
Thank you.
Before moving on to our next panel, we're going to share some of our partner videos with you.
Accounting taking up too much time? Facing constant back and forth with your accountant? Or worse, are you your own accountant? Meet Slate.ac, the new age accounting service for SMEs, blending human expertise with technology to manage your finances. Struggling with accounting? Just outsource it to Slate. Have your own accounting team. We empower you and them with greater visibility and insights. Slate works with growth-oriented companies to provide them an online interface for cash flow management, invoicing, payments, etc. Insightful reports. Prices start from Rs 11.99 per month, helping you save over 90% of cost compared to hiring a full-time accountant. Onboarding is easy as we work with Tally, QuickBooks and Zoho. Want to know more? Register for a free demo at www.slate.ac/demo.
Now we are ready with yet another illuminating session. For this panel, our topic is India-UK Startup Collaboration. And on this panel, we're delighted to have Mr. Richard Scott. He is the Program Manager at Steamhouse Business Incubator, Birmingham City University, along with Mr. Prem Kumar Bhartasarthi, Managing Partner at Pontac Venture Fund. We also have Mr. Nilendra Nath, Founder and CEO, Innovitas. Also joining us would be Ms. Laura Dimitris, Deputy Director, Investments and Marketing, British High Commission in India. This panel will be moderated by Mr. Shyam Nabur, Director, India Partnership at West Midlands Growth Company. He's an experienced founder with a demonstrated history of working in the government relations industry, skilled in negotiation, business planning, sales, and corporate communications and market research. Before I hand it over to you, sir, can I just remind the audience, if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to use the question and answers box provided in the bottom of your screen. Can I please request Shyam, sir, to open the discussion?
Thank you, Kakul, for that introduction. A very good afternoon to all of you and a very good evening to everyone in India. Before I start, I'd like to thank the Vice Chancellor, Mr. Arora, the Dean, Professor Davinder Singh and Nilendra Nath, who have given us the opportunity to have this panel from my side and on behalf of the panelists also. Such a fantastic, great initiative to bring together industry students and try and see how collaborations can work. Also, before we go ahead, our thoughts and our prayers are with everyone in India in these tough times in terms of COVID. And we stand with India in these tough times, and I'm certain and sure that these things, we will get over it together and there will be a new tomorrow. So without further delay, I wanted to quickly run through today's agenda in terms of this panel discussion. We've got 4 fantastic speakers and we've got 60 minutes in total discussing about UK-India startups, and some of them, all of them are veterans in their industry as such. So just few statistics before we sort of dwell into our panelist. UK is the 2nd largest startup ecosystem in the world, 3rd biggest market for tech unicorns globally, 1st in Europe. And venture capital funding for UK tech firms crossed 10 billion in 2019, a record-breaking of 44% increase year on year. The UK tech startup and scale-up ecosystem is valued at 585 billion USD, 120% more than 2017. It's more than double the next most valuable ecosystems, Germany at 291. From the India side of things, India, of course, as we all know, is a hub for startups and entrepreneurs, and we've seen that over these years. Small and entrepreneurs, startups, and small businesses, 4th biggest market for tech globally, and 3rd largest startup ecosystem globally again. This last year in 2020, India made the Global Innovation Index top 50 list of most innovative economies. The ecosystem has a cumulative valuation of 130 billion and has helped create more than 390,000 jobs, 60,000 of which were created in 2019. As we all know that 2020 has been the transformative year for all of us. And we've seen a complete new paradigm in terms of workforces being clustered in bedrooms and living rooms, and there was complete reliance on tech due to COVID. Now, this has led to a new breed of startups which have been created and built from day one. The way they think, the way they've raised money, the way they operate, and most importantly, the way they market their products and services. So I wanted to first bring on board Laura Dimitris from the British High Commission in India. Laura, could I request you to introduce yourself? And the first question that I've got for you is, why do you think startups are critical in the current environment from UK-India partnership perspective? Laura, over to you. I'm not completely sure if Laura was able to hear us. There seems to be a bit of a technical glitch, in which case I will quickly jump over to Prem. Oh, we've got Laura. Laura, can you hear us? No, I think that definitely, there is definitely a need for tech startups who can help Zoom communicate better in terms of audio in that case. So that's the first opportunity identified on the panel itself. I'll move on to someone who's been into the venture capital game for a very long time and very well respected in the UK-India circles, Prem Barthasarthi. Prem, could I please request you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your company. And the question that I've got for you is, what are the key aspects that a venture capitalist like you would look when investing in a startup in 2021? Prem, over to you.
Thanks, Shyam, and glad to be part of the panel. I hope you're all able to hear me okay. Give me a thumbs up, Shyam, if you can. Good. Great. So about Pontac, I mean, Pontac came out of a sense of purpose, having come into this country in 2005 from India, having been the first generation immigrant in my entire immediate family and the first person to board a flight. It was a pleasant experience, where it was a cultural shock. That was to start up with. But having traveled the typical corporate career, one started discovering himself or herself over a period of time. And my discovery of self-inquisition led to the need of purpose of wanting to give back to the economies that made me who I am today. So one thing led to another, multiple dreams, some very hazy, some very blurred, and some very distinct. One fine day I woke up and said, you know what, enough is enough, we need to do something about it. At which point in time I was at an interesting crossroad, whether I become an entrepreneur, create an innovation, and leave a legacy behind, or the second option was become an entrepreneur, back up fellow entrepreneurs and innovation, and leave a larger legacy behind. My mom always complained I was always greedy, so this was no different. So I ended up becoming much more greedy and become an entrepreneur, backing fellow entrepreneurs. And because I searched the dictionary and there was no other title or role that could encapsulate that, so I had to christen myself a venture capitalist. So that's how Pontac was born. So Pontac essentially is a UK-India fund, investing in B2B technologies of the future. We originally started investing in UK businesses, cross-pollinating them into India, and subsequently invested into Indian businesses in the B2B segment and cross-pollinated them into UK and beyond. So that's us at a very high level. 6 years in and still growing, so happy. With regards to what a typical VC expects, I think it's all got to do with the team. The first and foremost thing is the team, be it a single founder or group of people. It's all about the team and the chemistry behind them and what you're really trying, how they're kind of coming up with the ideas and ability to adapt, ability to look at markets differently, think of the future, and so on and so forth. That's tantamount. The way we say it is great idea, sluggish team, it's not going to go anywhere. decent idea, phenomenal team, it's got to go somewhere. So it's always the team, focus on the team, focus on the right complementary skills, focus on the people who are the Usain Bolts of this world, and focus on the people who are the speed breakers of this world. And if you have a combination of that, then it should be okay. It should be worthwhile.
Brilliant. That was fantastic, short and sweet. And I really like the fact of the need of purpose and give back, which is definitely important in the current environment and really well thought as such. I will come back to you because I think some of the key points that you've raised have sort of created some more questions for you. So I do apologize for making your life a little difficult. The next I wanted to come down is from Prem's perspective, as he highlighted complementary and speed breakers, team and skills, which is the most important part of things. And I think skills is what creates that difference in terms of who you got in your team and how they can deliver. Now, within the UK-India corridor, one of the most important elements is universities. And I think universities play a very critical role in terms of spin-offs. Conversation starts in the university campuses, it goes down to a spin-offs, and from spin-offs, the commercialization happens. And the commercialization then goes to the next level. That is where you need incubators. I wanted to bring in Richard out here, Richard Scott from one of the best universities in the West Midlands and in the UK, Birmingham City University. I'm a little biased towards them because I'm also from the West Midlands, the best region, and also one of the, Prem is looking at me with a smile, but I won't let him speak out there about any other city. Richard, could I bring you in to talk about a little bit about yourself, about the university? And my question for you is, you've got a fantastic project out there in one of the best cities in the world, which is very well known for startups. What is the project and how do you plan to bring it down to India and engage with Indian startups? Richard.
Yeah, Shyam, thank you so much for the introduction. And I totally agree about Birmingham being the best city in the UK. And seeing Prem laughing there, I'm sure he'll have me about that a little bit later. But so my name's Richard Scott. I'm head of incubation and business growth at Birmingham City University, and I sort of look after the STEAM House program. And BCU is a university based in Birmingham, which is the second largest city in the UK. And we have about 26,000 students. Unusually about some universities in the UK is that 70% of our students actually live in the Birmingham commute area. So we sort of position ourselves for the university for Birmingham, and I think that's really important. We also have around 2,000 international students from Asia. So sort of by nature, Birmingham is a very sort of multi sort of cultural area, and that's why sort of links to India are so important there, obviously. So the STEAM House project, so STEAM House is a huge investment for BCU, a £70 million programme which commenced 2 years ago, and it's only excuse the pun, getting steam at the moment. So STEAM is the alignment of STEM, so science, technology, engineering and maths, with the A, which is the artist in the middle. And interestingly, it's quite important that the Birmingham coat of arms shows the engineer and the artist working together. And that's what we're sort of trying to do, bring creativity and artistry and join them with sort of STEM, because every business, whatever its functional sector, needs the artist, it needs creativity to survive and sustain and grow. And so what is sort of, what am I talking about? What is STEAM House? We currently have a sort of makerspace, prototyping space, about 1,000 square meters, and about £1 million worth of equipment, from CNC machines, 3D printers, digital printers, textile machinery, AR and VR equipment, engineering. And then we've got the incubator, which is a new addition. We opened the incubator on March of last year, only to close it three weeks after that due to COVID, unfortunately. But hopefully sort of reopening again now, where we support students and graduates and local entrepreneurs on the business side of things. So that could be setting up the legal entity, one-to-one support from an accountant, a solicitor, a bank manager, and then support to scale and grow the business. We also run sort of weekly workshops that perhaps Shyam will talk about a little bit later. We're moving into a £65 million, 12,000 square metre building in January of 2022, where it's going to be on 5 floors, where we're going to combine teaching and skills from the computer science faculty, so some real good tech with innovation and business. We'll have the incubator, the prototyping space, an innovation lab, AR and VR studio, a 5G simulator, R&D space, event space, exhibition space, lots and lots of stuff, an artist studio, but then obviously space for SMEs and corporate businesses to use, to collaborate and to collide and co-work. So how are we bringing this to India? Well, the Hero Group, you know, I learned more about the Hero Group in a very painful way when I was watching the cricket the other day, watching India whack England all over the place. And it was the advertiser, I think, was on the back of Ashwin's bat at the time. And it was so it was quite a painful reminder of the Hero Group when I saw sort of England getting a bit of a battering by India in the cricket. But we're going to be working with the Hero Group, and they're going to be collaborating with BCU to establish the Munjal BCU School of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, the MBSI. And that's sort of Steamhouse India, and it's going to encourage innovation and entrepreneurship in the state of Punjab. The project will be located in Ludhiana and will support the needs of the state's business and industrial sector. And so we're going to aim to drive innovation and promote entrepreneurship, as well as boost the potential of knowledge-intensive business exchange. I don't know enough about the sort of, you know, I'm quite new to the program, but from what I understand, many students in this area of India have ambitions to enter higher education, and then they emigrate, and generally they're quite reluctant to remain in the Punjab because of the perception that the training and education on offer isn't up to the standard that it perhaps should be of an industrialised state. So I think, given this scenario, I think, you know, this collaboration has the potential to change mindsets and perhaps redesign higher education in a way that could sort of hopefully bring some more meaningful outcomes. So that's my first bit, Shyam. I'm from a commercial background. I'm not an academic, and I've, like sort of Prem, have run my sort of own business previously, and I've been sort of supporting businesses in the educational for the last sort of 15 years.
Brilliant, Richard. Thank you so much for that. I interestingly picked up certain things, changing mindsets, which is very critical in the current sort of, you know, situation. And of course, with regards to the incubator being open, and as things gradually open, we of course will see a steady flow of Indian startups, you know, maybe some of the ones from BML Munjal University out there. Although I must put across a quick caution, a line of warning to everyone on the panel to not talk about India versus England or about cricket, and secondly, to not debate about where chicken tikka is from, whether it is from India or from the UK. So that brings me to the discussion that I think when we have a venture capitalist, when we have universities, it is very important for them to talk. But I think the most important aspect out here is also about two governments speaking and collaborating and having a great relationship from the economic corridor perspective, from the trade perspective, and from engagement perspective. So I wanted to once again try and reach out to Laura if she can hear us now.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry about that.
Fantastic. So Laura, if you could introduce yourself, and I'll repeat my question to you is, why do you think startups are critical in the current environment from the UK-India partnership perspective, please? Laura.
Thanks, Shyam. And it's great to be here. And sorry, earlier my technology failed me, or rather I failed technology. So I think I just have myself on mute. But my name is Laura Demetrius. I'm the Deputy Director for Investment and Marketing at the British High Commission, based in Mumbai, but covering the whole of South Asia. I also have spent some time working on entrepreneurship within the government, within a program which I can briefly touch on, called the Global Entrepreneurship Program, and also working with the British Business Bank, which is one of the largest cornerstoning organisations of venture capital funds in the UK. So it's a real pleasure to be here. Why are entrepreneurs and why are small businesses so important? Ultimately, I mean, 95% of the British economy anyway, and I'm sure it's even more in India, are SMEs. Entrepreneurs are both tomorrow's SMEs and founders, as well as unicorns and large companies. But really, we're talking about driving the future of the economy and helping to support great ideas come to fruition to address some of the big challenges that we're looking at in the economy today. And from the UK perspective, we've been kind of trying to make sure that we create as supportive environment as possible for young thinkers as yourselves to come to help expand and grow your business in the UK if a next step to Britain is a place that makes sense for you as a business. So I thought I might just quickly run through some of the things that we do, not least because I think one of the questions that never comes up when I'm on panels is, what is the public sector doing here talking about business? Which I think is a really good question. And I think there's a really good answer to that when you bring in universities who are absolutely 100% part of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. But what role is there for government? So just thought I set out kind of some of the things that we do and that we help with. So I think, as I said, as I briefly touched on, in the UK, we're really committed to making sure that we have an excellent financing environment for entrepreneurs. And one of the ways we do that is to kind of support the financing community. But there are lots of other ways that we do help, and obviously some of those opportunities also exist in India through your government, through your ministries, but through organisations such as the UKRI, who provide equity financing and grant financing to university spin-outs, to young companies, to female entrepreneurs. Those are some of the things that kind of are available that we get involved in as government. We're also obviously involved in getting people to the UK, helping to facilitate that. There are two main entry routes now to the UK. It's the innovator and the startup visa, which have replaced the tier 1 entrepreneur route. And obviously we both deliver those visa routes. In some cases, we also endorse young companies or startups that are seeking to work through those routes. And I can touch on this program called the Global Entrepreneurship Program that does that alongside incubators and accelerators. And the other way that we also really support the kind of startup community is that my department that I work for, the Department for International Trade, we also work with very innovative companies looking for funding really kind of above the seed stage. So, once you've been successful and you're looking to expand and grow your company, we actually work with companies that are kind of at the Series A, Series B stage, who maybe have made a move to the UK, who are actually looking to be invested in by corporate VCs, by individual investors in India. So we're actually involved in kind of playing back some of these companies into the Indian corporate world and the investor community. So that's something else that we kind of help to facilitate. I think the other thing that it's probably kind of important for me just to say is, that there are obviously lots of other networking opportunities as well that we're trying to aggregate and make sure you have visibility of. I think one of the kind of byproducts of COVID has obviously been that so many great networking opportunities have gone online. And so, for example, the big AI festival CogX in the UK, which is in June, I believe that's going to be online this year. And also, I believe part of London Tech Week will again go online. And I think since we're talking about collaboration, and you might be looking to the UK to find a co-founder, you might be looking to the UK to talk to somebody who's going to finance your company so that you can apply for an investor visa. These are just great ways to do that, as well as working through the kind of existing accelerator and incubator routes. So we're really here to kind of help support you. We work really closely also with organisations such as PREMS. But one thing that I just wanted to give you is that sometimes we also run competitions and schemes in India. So recently we had something called the Innovation Challenge Fund. We've had things called the Tech Rocket Ship Program, which is basically a competition for startups to kind of get a fully paid for trip to the UK to work with a mentor. We advertise all of this on our Twitter channel. So if you want to make sure that you follow that, it's probably a good way to just keep up to date with what we're doing and be able to kind of access that information without kind of scrolling through every UK government website. Thanks a lot.
Brilliant. That was fantastic, Laura. I would urge everyone to connect with Laura and her brilliant team in the British High Commission, Delhi. The British High Commission has got offices all across East, West, in Mumbai, in Chennai, in Bangalore, in Calcutta, in Pune, and many other places, which probably I have missed out on, so I do apologize. But I think they are a brilliant team in terms of supporting startups, SMEs, and companies who are interested and keen to trade, invest with the United Kingdom. And I do urge all of you to connect with her and engage further. So from that perspective, I think we've covered the venture capitalists, we've covered the university and the skills piece, and we've sort of got into discussions around UK-India trade from the government perspective. The most important aspect of everything is an ecosystem. If there is an ecosystem, then startups can thrive, they can flourish, and they can deliver some fantastic results in the longer run. Which brings me smoothly into our next speaker, Nilendra Nath. And Neil and I have known each other for quite a while, and I'm always inspired by the way he works in terms of connecting individuals across the world through his fantastic network. So Neil, can I request you first to introduce yourself? And the question that I've lined up for you is, because you work so closely with startups, according to you, what are the issues that are faced by startups? And with COVID, what is the perspective? Has it changed? Has it become more difficult? And what part can startup ecosystems play to minimize or eliminate these blocks or hindrances which can affect startups? Neil, over to you.
Thank you, Shyam, and good morning to everyone in India. So I'll start introducing myself with what I do here, and then I'll come to your question, and I'll close with what we are doing with India and UK. I moved to UK 4 years ago, and we started in the space of innovation and impact management here. We identified that there was a lack of a systematic process to identify the potential within the startup community. It's a very, less data kind of space where you are just speculating which businesses can do better. So we tried to bring more sense into it, more data into it, and a process that could help identify. And during that process, we started working a lot with different startups across the globe, which brought us to a point where we realized that there is a requirement for a lot of more synergy among different geographies in standardizing the way people see systems across border working. And with that segue, I come to your question, is that two of the fundamental issues that startups across the globe, irrespective of the industry or technology, face is lack of awareness and access. So the way the ecosystem have evolved over years, and it's not by mistake of anyone, it's just that how things grew organically, is that there's been developed a sense of a catchment. So most of the ecosystem support services, whether VCs or you talk about incubators or even government focuses, are focused on certain hubs from where startups can be pulled in. And there are certain channels which are extremely siloed, through which people can get access to all the support system that they require. It worked well when you had less inflow of startups coming into the system, and essentially coming from a very strong hubs like your Silicon Valley or in Bangalore in India or London in UK. But as these hubs started spilling over and you had smaller centers coming in and more people getting connected to internet, more people wanting to build their own business, these are not a sufficient solution. And it's saddening, but most of the time you see a lot of startups as they start growing, as they start building, spending much more of their time just to figuring out that who they should be connecting to, what they should be doing, than actually focusing on building their product. So in the current scenario, COVID or no COVID, even pre-COVID, the ecosystem needs to build themselves up to increase their scope and have more centers, more reach out and channelize themselves, have a simpler way of people to connect to these services, your support system you talk about, incubation or the government programs or VC or funds or different kind of angel funds, angel networks, a simpler way for them to connect, a simpler way and a broader scope, broader catchment for them to identify startups which are not necessarily in your tech hubs or in the bigger cities. So that's something that then I come to the next part, is that that's something which led to India Global, which we co-founded last year back in India, where we are trying to streamline all these informations, all these processes in a single channel, which can help businesses, startups, and also we are focusing on MSMEs to identify the opportunities outside India. And the same way, other way around, the startups and MSMEs outside India, which wants to have an access to India, they use that channel, a single channel, to get into the market. So that's where we are. That's what we are doing right now. Thank you.
Fantastic, Neil. I think that was very well highlighted in your sort of address. I, of course, picked up environment for synergies, lack of environment for synergies, environment for synergies, not lack. Two issues: lack of access and awareness, which is very critical and important, and then, of course, channels and the outreach that we need within both the ecosystems to be able to get the best and to able to address the issues faced. I sort of want to come back to Prem, from that point. And given that, as Neil mentioned, of course, Indian startups are well known across the world, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Mumbai, Delhi, all across NCR region, Gurgaon, there have been startups. Again, a lot of initiatives from private sector organizations, like I know of the Deloitte Fast 50, which identifies the top 50 fastest growing telecom, media and technology companies. From the Indian startups perspective, my question to you, Prem, is how can Indian startups create their own niche and become number one in raising VC confidence in this uncertain environment, given where things are between both the sides? Someone like you, what would your sort of perspective be when there is a startup who's trying to differentiate from across the world? From Silicon Valley, there are startups who already have that perception that this will be a brilliant product. How can our startups in India, differentiate and create their own niche? Prem.
Yeah, thanks, Shyam. I mean, I think it all boils down to execution, in my humble opinion. But before I speak about that, you mentioned about this uncertain circumstances. It's going to be a long-winded answer to this, but it's important to go back to history. There has always been trade in some capacity. When there was no currency, they were buying and selling of goods way back. And then came coins, then came currency, then came debit cards and credit cards and what have you, and now Bitcoin, right? At the end of the day, it has only been an instrument to consummate the trade. The trade has always happened. The enabler has been one form of the other. So that way, business will grow, trade will happen, and buy and sell will always happen in any capacity. It will only transform itself from one form to another, right? So it needs to be understood that in this uncertain times, the trade will still happen, but the patterns of consumption is what is changing. When I say pattern of consumption, we spoke about health tech and health tech and so on and so forth. What is previously physical is only digital now, and it will be something else. We don't know, right? So what is important for Indian companies or any companies is to think through the changes in the market and how they can create modular capabilities within themselves to be able to reassess, refine, and redo things if they need to. Right? That's point number one. Point number two, in terms of having an execution, what is also important in the current climate especially is, I think that the world is what I call a digitally global and a globally neutral world that we're living in. When I say digitally global, irrespective of where the product comes from, your products and services, you're actually trying to sell not just in India, you're also selling it across the world. That's number one, because that's what the digital component has come through. The second thing, globally neutral, is your consumers have become globally neutral. They don't care where this product comes from, as long as it's good value for money and good quality, and I'm able to get it at ease, I'm fine with it. So think of building a business which is sustainable, which is digitally global and globally neutral, and then focus on execution. And funnily enough, it's coming from a venture capitalist. Don't raise money if you don't have to. Right? Try and deliver on unit economics. Try and deliver on as much as you can. Protect the interest of the firm. And only when you need growth capital, go to the venture capitalist, because at the end of the day, venture capitalists are trading their commodity, which is money, which is your commodity, which is your products and services. Again, it's a trade. Let's start.
Brilliant. I think that is fantastic advice from someone like you, Prem, who's seen both the sides of the coin really well. So I must mention and urge everyone to ask as many difficult questions to our panelists as possible. The list is already going up, as I can see. I wanted to come back to Richard after this discussion with Neil and with Prem on the Steam House project, because I'm sure we've got close to around 95 participants, out of which many would be wondering, how can I be incubating at the Steam House project? Is there a criteria? Is there someone that I can connect with? Is there more information that I can get with? So can I ask you, Richard, how are you engaging with specifically Indian startups, if you are, that is? And the second one is, if there is a startup currently in, which is starting from the university, how can they be based at the Steam House project? And is there a criteria that you're defining in terms of sectors, in terms of exposures, in terms of team sizes and things? Could you please elaborate on that, Richard? The classic dialogue of 2020 and 2021, you're on mute.
Happens about 10 times a day, unfortunately. Apologies about that, Sean. But just going back to Prem's point there, I think he's right that businesses change because of COVID, will change and is changing so much. And it is the chance of becoming a global business is much easier than it was when I was running my business 20, 30 years ago. So what we're doing, so at the moment we're working really closely with Professor Devinder at BML Munjal University, where we're doing lots of weekly workshops for entrepreneurial students to attend. And these are generic business skills, which I think are so important. So it could be accounts and cash flow, it could be social media, digital skills, getting the most from your sort of marketing and sales, understanding your customer. And I think the world's changing because of COVID. So I think there's going to be real appetite in the next 2 or 3 years for perhaps, whereas an SME or a business may have taken on a graduate in the past, I think they may be sort of subcontracting more graduates and taking on sort of giving chunks of work to sort of to freelancers and to self-employed people. So we need to upskill these people to have those business skills to enable them to be competitive in that arena, because I think that arena is going to be quite big in the next sort of 5 years. So we're doing that. So rather than saying you must be starting your own business, you need to be an entrepreneurial student, we're trying to engage all students at the moment, Sean, where we're saying that every student needs to understand about business but they're more employable if they do. So if they're a marketing student, they need to sort of understand about accounting and different aspects of business. So that's something we're working really closely on. So collaboration wise, we have something called Innovation Fest, which is very similar to this competition, where we're going to be inviting student entrepreneurs from BML Munjal University to participate. That will be in June. We have, and Laura mentioned this, we have about 10 students who are international students from India who have taken up startup visas to run their business here. I met with one yesterday who was a really quite exciting tech business who's sort of got some really interesting smart technology going on. Potentially could be a wonderful business. So we're supporting about 10 startup entrepreneurs via their startup visa. And criteria wise, obviously we're interested in technology, but it's not just about technology. I just think the willingness to listen, to implement the support and advice we're giving, and hopefully have sort of the potential to grow and as Prem said, just in the first stage, to sustain the business. So I think going forward, lots of opportunities, but the next sort of one that we're going to be promoting soon is something called Innovation Fest, which is going to be in June, where we're hoping sort of, between, as many startups as possible from BNL will be able to sort of pitch in that competition.
Brilliant. Thank you, Richard. That is fantastic. So the Innovation Fest, and before we end the session today, I will request all our panelists to share their email addresses or the Twitter handles where everyone can reach out to. Thank you for that, Richard. That brings me back to Laura in terms of government support. The Honorable Prime Minister Boris Johnson is supposed to visit India this week, and unfortunately, things had to be cancelled out. In the current scheme of things, I do understand there is an enhanced trade partnership which is sort of developing between both the sides. Given that there are a lot of startups from India who are keen to set up in the UK, what sort of support is available from HMG and the British High Commission specifically for startups? And in this sort of a digital age where things can run quickly and things can be done faster. Could you highlight that, please?
Sure, and thanks for flagging our future bilateral trade ambitions. I think it was a real shame that the Prime Minister couldn't come and visit, obviously for understandable reasons. I know he's very, very keen to come to India, so I think it's a matter of watch this space. And I think sooner rather than later, you should see some quite interesting announcements with regarding to kind of where we're looking to progress bilaterally in terms of a trade partnership. So I think keep your eyes peeled. But in terms of what you can expect from us and what we can help you with, I think there's a kind of two or three tracks here. Obviously, we talked about some of the visa routes and some of the explanatory material. I would suggest you go to gov.uk to look for that in terms of eligibility and how you can apply. What's really useful about that is that on those pages, so it's the gov.uk pages, they actually list, for example, in the innovative visa, a lot of the organisations that can actually endorse you for that visa. So some of that decision making is delegated, and that's because, for example, for their innovative visa, which is also has a settlement route attached to it, there are lots of things that need to be looked at. For example, your business plan, whether the business is operating or not, and basically government has taken the position that the best people to assess that are obviously people who work with and mentor and support businesses rather than the government itself. So there's a kind of partnership there which involves making sure that we work with business and endorsees from incubators and accelerators and also investees to do that. One of the ways that we can actually help is we have a dedicated program that I alluded to. It's called the Global Entrepreneurship Program. And really what this is about it's about helping companies who want to move to the UK to do so through kind of a dedicated support system. It's effectively a process where we offer kind of free of charge a kind of mentoring and support to move to the UK in terms of endorsement for a visa to kind of a select number of companies that we think kind of the most innovative and interesting. And we actually have kind of 14 to 15 what we call deal makers, but effectively they're angels, investors, they're VCs, they're kind of like retired founders in their own right, who effectively scour the globe to look for some of the most exciting companies that they can see have an applicable company to the UK, where they can see that a movement will help them to grow the business. So you can find out more about that through us. We also often do kind of seminars with some of our key deal makers that focus on India. So one of those is Alpesh Patel. We have a few others as well. But really what they do is they cover almost every sector really, and they're all experts in the right. So we have somebody who's, come from a digital and gaming background. We have somebody who is much more focused on kind of med tech and used to run a business in that area. So that's what we kind of do to support in terms of people looking to make the move. And as Shan was signposting much better than I have, please do be in touch if you think that you might qualify for that. But I think it really is looking at a stage of company where you're looking to make a move. You've got an established business, and it's also kind of about looking at the entrepreneur themselves. A lot of the relationship is between these mentors that we have and the entrepreneur. As we know, 90% of small businesses fail. It's really about kind of building that relationship, because it might be this business, it might be the next one, or the 10th business that you build that is really the one that is the breakthrough company. So we're looking to work with those sorts of people. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you, Laura. Thank you very much for that. I just wanted to quickly raise one quick question. And I do apologize for the background score. There's some food that is being cooked in my kitchen, so I do apologize for that. but that's the reality of COVID in this age. So
we call it value-added service, Shyam.
Sorry.
We call it value-added service.
Absolutely. So, Laura, just for the benefit of all our viewers, could you just confirm, are there any costs involved when you support companies, organizations, and all the programs that you've mentioned? Because I know about it, but I think our viewers and individuals and audiences who are listening in, who've tuned in, would like to know what are the costs involved?
So, for example, this program that I was alluding to, GEP, that really globally kind of works with about 30 to 40 companies a year. There are no costs associated with that program. Obviously, it's not an accelerated program. It's not about necessarily building the business. It's about companies who are ready to move and to use that mentorship to build connections and grow their business from the UK. I think in terms of costs, there are always going to be some costs associated with looking to internationalize your business. In terms of visas, those are detailed on the websites. But yes, for the programs, there's no cost associated with that. Obviously, we also run a lot of competitions where we actually fund you to come over and kind of explore the ecosystem, and there's no cost associated with that either. So everything that's out there, including visa costs, is designed to be proportionate and really cover the cost of administration. So I hope that answers your question.
Brilliant. No, that's fantastic. So there's potentially no cost in terms of all the support that the British High Commission offer, other than, of course, the individual costs like visas and commercial deals and things which have to be managed by the company. No, that's fantastic. Thank you so very much for that. Can I come to Neil in that case? And Neil, in terms of the UK-India startups, I think you very rightly mentioned about the issues and the hindrances and the blocks that they face. Now, going one step further, in your opinion, how can you create links between UK and India from the startup ecosystem? What exactly is, your perspective on that, and what is, how can we get a very strong, sustainable, long-term, scalable ecosystem established between both the sides? And I'm conscious we've got almost all the partners from the VC to the university to the government and you. So, what would you say about creating that ecosystem between UK and India from startup perspective in 2021? Neil.
Right. So UK and India have historically had a very strong trade linkage. For years, you have had these business skills on organizations, both sides supporting trade relation between that, and that has very smoothly transitioned into startup linkage as well. So as we speak, there does exist a very strong network on both sides which supports startup to come here or for businesses here to go there. If I can say that if you're talking about India tech story, London would be a very strong co-actor in that story. So the stage where we are now is not to build that linkage that exists, given that you have university ties up, you have a lot of students here, you have a big bunch of Indian, especially fintech startups, setting themselves in London and building from there. We are at a stage where we are trying to spread that further. So having regional organizations come into, regional relationships being built in. So organizations like your West Midlands and Midas and Scottish Development, West Business Development, those are coming and those are building individual ties across region in India. And last 5 years or so, we have also seen British High Commission spreading far across India than just having centers in, say, Mumbai and Delhi. Now you have in Ahmedabad, you have centers, you have Hyderabad, you have in East, you have multiple centers, you have representatives sitting in the smaller centers as well. So now we are at that stage where we are building that. One thing which is still to happen is that the startup programs are very focused on tech only. So that is the space where we are moving to. And in the last 6-7 months, so we have been at India Global, we have been building a lot of programs to bring things which are non-tech. So your agri-businesses, your pure product-based trade businesses, which are in a kind of gray area. They are not typically coming within the scope of incubation or other kind of programs when you talk startup. And so your textile trade, your manufacturing, spare manufacturing companies. So those are the things that we have been focusing in the last 6 to 8 months. And we have seen a lot of them moving. In fact, if I can tell you, in the last 3 weeks, I have had 5 companies registering themselves in UK. So that's happening at a very high pace. With respect to COVID, One thing that has happened is that people generally have a lot of mental block when you talk about setting up in different countries and moving, that it requires a lot of cost and you need to physically move when you are trying to do all of these things. COVID actually took that block away. People realize that you don't really have to physically go somewhere to get things done. You can sit back, you can connect over internet. A lot of what is considered very critical paperwork or meetings, they don't have to happen in person. So actually, it has sort of gave an impetus, gave a push to get things happen more actively. So that's the space where we are on. We are not at a space where we need to set up linkages. We are in a place where we need to utilize these linkages with way more efficiency.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Neil, for that. I'm conscious of time. So before I go to the last question, I wanted to take in some questions which have come in. So I'll start from the first one, which has come from Jitin Nathani, where he's asked, what is the scope of textile trading? Neil, do you want to take that? Because it's interesting that you actually mentioned this just when we were speaking about the ecosystems.
Yes, so I mean, I would need to know more with this question. What is the scope of textile trading? Actually, a lot, essentially, at a very fundamental level. A lot has been happening between India and UK, especially when I look towards the east of India. A lot of government programs have been initiated by local ministers and stuff to put through your traditional woven cloth and all of that to stand across. Not only to UK as a European market overall, then you have British Council doing a lot of artisan exchange work, where they look at, so textile itself is not something which they target at. They target at artisan work, but includes a lot of textile work that's happening. Otherwise, in your good old trade space, textile has been one of the very important product that goes from India to Europe. So yeah, there's huge scope. Now, which kind of textile and what level of business, retail, or what kind of like you are doing a B2B supplier, those are the things that need to be understood.
Fantastic. I think in terms of textiles, India definitely has an upper hand, because I have personally seen the Made in India brand almost on most of the M&S or the other private retail brands from your clothing perspective and other bits perspective. So I totally agree with Neil. There is tremendous scope in terms of textiles, and I think in this age, the only new word that has been added to textile is technical or digital textiles. In terms of that next level, in terms of technology innovation, of how they can be microprocessors or inside a material, a blanket, which can sort of beep when a child needs a nappy change. It might sound funny, but I think this is the sort of next level in terms of things. And again, bearing in mind that UK has a substantial percentage of senior citizens, I think that can really make a difference in terms of technical textiles and digitization. The next question that I've got out here is from Cynthia Elam, which says, is this program open for people outside your country? And is this, I think the question is it open to people outside your country? I believe the answer would be yes to that. I think depending on what country you're from, I believe the British High Commission or the consulate in that region will certainly help and support any programs that are global programs as such. Am I right in saying that, Laura?
It doesn't matter what country you're from. It's just not for UK companies. Yeah, so it's
brilliant. Thank you. And then I've got one more last question, which is from Piyush Jain, which says, and this is, I believe, for Prem, and it's a very tough one, Prem, so be ready for it. It says, hello, sir. According to you, what should be involved in an impressive pitch deck? Prem.
I would like to give an example of what happened in my own case. As I told you, I'm not a venture capitalist because I did not have anywhere else to go to call myself. I became a venture capitalist, more an entrepreneur myself. My first check came in my 623rd meeting. Right? So it's only the first 15 to 20 meetings that I actually use the pitch deck for the fund. From there on, it was more finessing myself and my story and what I wanted to say, and so on and so forth, and what the investors want to hear, and what really am I taking as feedback from the investors to be able to invest into the fund. So the shortest answer is the most important thing in an impressive pitch deck is you. Focus on you, focus on what you want to do and why you want to do it, and what value are you going to create out of that. The rest will automatically flow.
Well, that's a very impressive answer. I wanted to come to Neil also, because Neil works on a lot of ecosystems. Neil, any advice that you would sort of give if...
So I go with Prem on that completely. There are two stages when you have to put up pitch deck. When you have somebody asking it, so they will give you a clear guideline if there is a fund or someone that what they want to look at. So that's another stage. Essentially, what you want when you are sending unsolicited pitch deck or you're sending your first communication to someone is to pique their interest and get them to a point where they want to ask you more questions about what you're doing. So just focus on that. Why somebody would want to have a conversation with you, why somebody would want to get back to you after looking at your pitch deck.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. So open-ended questions, as Neil mentioned, so that can be leading in terms of those venture capitalists who want to engage. And as rightly pointed out by Prem, in focus on yourself and develop yourself so that it can become better and better in the coming days. I'll come also to Richard and to Laura for their perspective on an impressive deck in terms of presenting across. What do you guys think, given that you work also with a lot of startups and you have business plans and impressive presentations shared with you on a regular basis, what do you think would be, in addition to what Neil and Prem have said, are the critical aspects of an impressive deck?
I'll quickly start. I think what Prem said is spot on. I think you need passion, obviously. One of the most things you need integrity, but you need realism. And I think sort of investors will sort of will easily see over people who've been unrealistic within their pitch. And I think, as Prem said, it's all about the entrepreneur rather than the idea. I think the sort of entrepreneur presenting themselves in the correct manner with the realistic and with integrity is the most important thing there.
Laura, could I come to you for your perspective, please?
I defer to the experts, as people who are spending money and investing. I think the key thing, I totally agree with Prem and Richard. I think it's about you. I think it's about your ability to sell that deck. Don't put anything in that you can't sell, or that you're not comfortable with, because it's probably the conversation rather than the kind of length of the deck that really means whether you're going to A, have a follow-on conversation, or B, look at a kind of long-term relationship with either the investor or the kind of mentor or contact that you want to work with. Thanks.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. So integrity, focus on realism, and of course experts in things. And again, focusing on yourself. The entrepreneur matters first, and then the idea. So wonderfully said. And that brings me to the next question very quickly, which is from Tanush Agarwal. And he's asking, how does one come to know that the idea has some potential? I open it up to any of you who would like to pick that up, please.
Should I take it? Yeah, right. So it's a very, sorry, who asked that question? That is Tanush. Tanush, if I were to think about it, make it simple for you. Think of a simple X and a Y axis. X-axis as time and also X-axis as money and time and interchangeably. You have every business has got only two curves. One is a revenue curve, other is a cost curve. The difference between these two is profit. So your idea, if it's a B2B business, that's where we are focusing on. If it's an idea, you need to focus on, number one, whether your product or service that you're offering is helping your client increase their revenue or decrease their cost. So that's got a direct impact on the profit and then subsequently the shareholder value. That's point number one. Point number two is, once you establish that, then you define in which sector that you're having this product or service, be it agriculture or health or whatever it is, define exactly which part of the value chain are you part of. or your solution part of, which is either at the, if you talk about aggregated farm to fork, it's either the farmer level or the e-commerce level or the distribution level and logistics level. So that's the second thing. Once you've established that, then you think about whether you are actually solving a problem or you're solving, you're giving a solution which is complementing the solution to an existing product, right? So that's another angle to think about. And the fourth thing is, once you establish these three things, you would know whether your idea is actually good or not. Then look at the actual effect of how big is the market size. These four questions, if you're able to look at it, I think you should have a view on whether the product is good or the company is good or not, and that's what I do. And basically, in simple terms, as an investor, I am not looking at reasons to invest in a company. I'm looking at reasons to not invest in a company.
I think that is wonderfully said. We thought it was a panel discussion, not a masterclass, but I'm so glad that you've given some fantastic tips out there in terms of what the individuals need to do in terms of the ideas. Neil, could I come to you for your perspective on how to classify or how to look at a potential, whether an idea is good, bad, how to get there?
So if a formula is to put, Prem has put that, you look at the difference between the cost of building it and the revenue benefit that it's going to make to anyone, or the value it's going to generate to anyone. That's going to happen. I'll take it from a more base perspective, that as a founder, as an ideator, you come up with something, and where do you go to get a perspective that am I going to go anywhere with it? So the first thing is that what kind of end result you have as a ideator you're looking at. Where do you want to end up with that idea? And based on that, you look at the validation points. Now, your validation point can come from talking to the people who have been in that space. Your validation point can come from talking to the prospective client or people you are trying to generate value for. Go out in market and you can validate from the market. So those are the few points which are there. Whether an idea has a potential or not is not something you're going to get out in one step. You will be validating and revalidating it at every point. So you will ideate it, you will get some sense that find this something which is workable. And from that workable idea, you will reach to a point where you will have a tangible solution which can be put out in the market. And it's very possible that at that point, you will realize that to build the solution is not something which is viable. You will not have a value come out of it, which is higher than the cost or effort that's going to go into building this. So it is a process which you keep doing at different point of time. Formula-wise, you can completely follow what Prem is saying, is that is the value you're creating is higher than the cost that's going to go into. Otherwise, you keep validating it, you keep talking to people. That's the only way of doing it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Neil. Richard and Laura, could I come to you guys for your perspective on the question? I'll repeat the question for you once again. How does one come to know that the idea has potential? And coming to you both, because the fact that Laura, of course, works on Tech Rocket Ship program, which is an extensive way of getting some of the leading technology startups to the UK. And of course, from Richard's perspective, his background as an entrepreneur and of course, speaking about the incubator in Steam House. So how does one come to know that an idea has some potential?
I'll be really quick on this, Shyam. I think market research is key, in my view. It may be a good idea, but it may not just be the right time for it. There was a gentleman called Clive Sinclair, who was a brilliant UK entrepreneur who sort of brought out something called the C5. And anyone who wants to Google it, it was a little electric car 40 years ago. And it became a bit of a laughing stock because he hadn't done the market research. The time wasn't right for that product at that time. It was probably a good product. He was probably 30 years sort of ahead of his time, but he hadn't done the market research, and that's why the product failed. And it became, as I say, a bit of a laughing stock. So I think market research is key. That's one thing that I take. And Prem and Neil have covered the rest, I think, from my point of view.
Laura?
I think the interesting thing about this is just, how do you know if your idea doesn't have necessarily the right bandwidth for that moment, and how should you proceed? And I think the key way to work that out is just to build your network and find somebody who can give you really good advice. Because what I've seen, the kind of best mentors, kind of prospective angels that you might be talking to for a couple of years might be able to help you think about either how to pivot your idea or maybe how to move on to something new. and maybe just have to think about, well, if this idea is not going to work, I've still got the capability to build an amazing business. Maybe I need to move on to that other idea that I kind of put to the side. So I think it's also about just getting that kind of regular feedback. And I just wanted to say, because we haven't really talked about it, about the fact that we really need to drive the number of women entrepreneurs. And I think, you know, that also really essential. There's a really big ecosystem in the UK that's developed in terms of financing women entrepreneurs, providing grants to women entrepreneurs, and also networks. And, you know, India is also a fantastic place to talk with some really savvy, you know, female mentors and investors, and not just women, but also men as well, who want to see women succeed as business owners. So I think if you're a female on this call as well, reach out to people who you know are kind of looking to support you on that journey. Thanks.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Wonderful thoughts. I will take two more questions. The next one is from a gentleman called Piyush Jain, who says, sir, according to you, the investor focuses more on business plan or on the product? Prem, I think most of these are directed at you, so I do apologize, but
I should have told earlier, just like what we said, what I told you, that you go easy on me. I should have told the students to go easy on us too, right? Nevertheless. So the answer to the question is, if I just put it black and white as first pass, the answer is the product. Without the product, the business plan doesn't exist. However, again, it's a case of X and a Y axis. Okay, so X being the product and the product features, and Y being the business and market penetration, or lines of business, or clients, and what have you. Traditionally, what we have found, and we have said no to businesses, is where the product has been good, there is far more weightage given on building the product and the product features without actually commercialization. So without commercialization, then the company is not a sustainable company. So what we generally tend to say to startups and in our portfolio, and we completely monitor them, is between the x-axis, which is the product and the product features, and the y-axis, which is the penetration into the market. At the initial stages, are they growing as a square? Are they growing as a rectangle, either laterally or other way around? If not as a square, there should be a reason for it. And if they are not as a square, we generally don't tend to invest at early stage. However, when you have grabbed the market, then it becomes easy for the company to grow with the product and product features, and you're basically increasing the basket size of your own product, say being sold to your clients. So net product first, business plan comes next, but initially grow as a square before you become a rectangle.
Thank you so much, Prem. So square, then a rectangle, and then product, and then your business plan. That's wonderfully summarized. Our next question is for Neil. So Neil, you spoke about India Local. The question is, how can startups get connected? And how does this help in cross-border startup? The question is from Davinder.
Right. So what India Global essentially does is it checks the startups for their market readiness. It does the market mapping for them. So identify whether they are fit for a market to go into that market right at that point in their journey or not. And then we connect them to the right kind of experts in those markets. So if you need any kind of legal or corporate legal experts or finance person in that place, as investors or incubation programs in those countries. So that's how it works. Startups can reach out through the website, etc. So there are programs which we roll out time to time, but they aren't essentially. If they are looking for something specific, we come up with that. Otherwise, in general, we work with startups and MSMEs. So our focus largely in India Global, our focus largely on MSMEs, but those lines are not very clearly defined. So startup and MSMEs is one block that we take. And people can reach out through the website. I've shared the email address, so they can do that as well.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And that brings me to the last question, which I'm going to go across the panel. So what guidance will you give to young startups from BML Munjal University while they are embarking on their startup journey in 2021? We've discussed quite a lot of points, from focusing on yourself, having a clear idea in terms of whether there is potential in terms of your idea, from the ecosystem's perspective, how critical they are, connecting with the organizations like the British High Commission, working and identifying incubators like Steam House that exist. given all of you are veterans in your own field, what is your advice to young startups while they're starting their journey in this challenging environment as such? And, to be successful, what is your mantra? I'll start with Laura, if that's okay.
The mantra, I think, it's a very difficult time to kind of be putting some of our existing mantras into practice because I'm assuming that I'm on a call with a lot of people who like to work hard, like to deliver, and like to see the results of that activity. And we're operating in a time where actually many of us have had to take a step back to look after family and friends and to look after ourselves. So I think for me, succeeding in this time in a COVID context is about balance, and actually that's going to help us all kind of deliver better and more sustainably as we get through this period of time. Thanks.
Thank you, Laura. That was fantastic. Balance is the most important one. I totally agree with you in these uncertain times. I'll come to Richard. Richard, according to you, what is your advice, please?
Yeah, I'm a very, very simple man. So my advice is quite simple, I think, and quite generic, and it applies to all startups. So I think the first important thing is time management, managing your time. Spend the majority of your time earning a fee or your hourly rate. You get lots of entrepreneurs who say, I've spent 10 hours this week doing my accounts. Well, don't do that. Get a bookkeeper, or get, somebody mentioned Slate, a new bit of software. If you can save 5 hours a week and you charge £40 an hour as a web developer, that's £10,000 a year extra sort of revenue you've got coming in by saving those 5 hours on doing something that you need to understand, but other people can do it better than you and quicker than you. So that's one bit. Secondly, upselling is thing. Entrepreneurs nowadays don't upsell. They get an order, they get a contract, they do a great piece of work for a client, and then they don't sort of ask for further pieces of work. I think, and it's much easier to upsell, to get a recommendation, to get perhaps a testimonial from a piece of work they've already done. And then finally, and it's very simple, but just agree good payment terms with your clients. A lot of businesses will know you're a startup business, will know that you need cash in order to survive. So make sure that you get some type of payment up front, you get a sort of a middle payment if you're doing a website, and then you get sort of the balance at the end of it. So also just really sort of simple stuff. But I think the big one on that is time management. And Prem talks about adding value. Make sure that your time is spent adding value for the business, not doing stuff that doesn't add value and you're not very good at.
Thank you, Richard. So balance for Laura, time management and upselling in terms of Richard. Neil, could I come to you from your perspective? What is the advice and the mantra in terms of these new startups who are starting their journey?
So around this time, I'm betting strong on B2C. More and more people are coming online. More people are using internet and mobile. Internet access has increased. So I'm betting strong on D2C startups. That's the space that, and ultimately all the technologies come down to being a people technology. So that's one space. If you're exploring or you're starting your journey, contextualize your solutions for people, identify the demography that you are best positioned to serve, and contextualize. That's one. Second thing, build an out and open. There's a strong tendency, and especially I'm talking from the India context, for people to work in isolation, to not to share what they're building on until they are finally out with the product or something. Build an open, go out and talk to as many people, find mentors, find advisors, talk to your potential customers while you're building. Don't build in isolation.
Fantastic. So contextualize your solution, build an open, speak to customers, get their research, balance, time management. Prem, putting you on spotlight now.
I think it's a 5-pointer. Number one, believe. Believe in yourself and believe in the product and believe that you will find the right product as the market will teach you. Number two is once you've got the belief, yes, you have to do analysis, but avoid analysis paralysis. Jump and let the market teach you. So, and that can only happen with the mindset of number three, which is preparing to fail and preparing to fail fast. And that leads you The fourth point, once you've failed and failed fast, you basically will have to have the mindset to adapt and refine your thinking. Because what you really realistically find is the business plan is the most fluid plan of all. There's no business plan which has ever gone to plan, in my view. And the last one is, while you do all of this, focus on value creation, not valuation. That's it.
Brilliant. So believe in yourself. Jump when the market teaches you. The third one was fail fast. Mindset to adapt, and then believe in value, then valuation, as rightly pointed out. And in addition to that, balance is pointed out by Laura, time management and upselling by Richard, and contextualize your solutions, speak to everyone, build an open, as rightly pointed out by Neil. So I think this has been a phenomenally engaging panel discussion. I must show you the sheet, because the sheet is almost filled up with everything that we've discussed, from believing yourself, innovation, startups, the pattern of consumptions, journey of tech, environment for synergy, some of the things that we've sort of looked upon. And I wanted to sort of thank everyone on the panel, Prem, Neil, Laura, Richard, on behalf of the university. And thank you so much for sharing your insights. I'm sure everyone who's been on the call has tremendously gained from the insights that you've shared, the masterclass lessons that you've shared. And I believe many of the startups will be reaching out to all of you on LinkedIn or Twitter or through Professor Davinder Singh. So thank you once again to all our panelists. A big thank you to Professor Davinder Singh, to Neil, to the Vice Chancellor, Mr. Arora, and the entire team, who have been students who've been working behind the scene, Prachi and Ishika, and the entire organizing team of Pitchfest. I hand it over back to Professor Singh now to take this ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Shyam. You've done a fantastic work. I mean, and I've personal thanks to each and every panelist, Richard, Prem, Neil, and Laura. So with one of the very engrossing and very helpful discussions. Thank you so much for all of you for your time. Thank you so much. Move on to Kakul. Next session, please. Thank you, everybody.
So moving forward, we have a very exciting session, a fireside conversation planned with Mr. Nikhil Kamath, co-founder and CEO, True Beacon and Zerodha. He co-founded Zerodha with his brother Nitin. The company aimed to revolutionize Indian financial market access by adopting a transparent, ultra-low fee. The company aimed to revolutionize Indian financial market by adopting a transparent, ultra-low fee with a proprietary tech-driven strategy. With over 3 million users, Zerodha is now the country's largest retail brokerage platform. It facilitates orders worth $10 billion USD per day, which accounts for about 15% of the daily equity volume in India. Joining him, we have Mr. Shashantu Mitra, founder, CEO, Lead Angels. Lead Angels works with startups at every stage of growth. He has diverse experience and has worked across various local and global firms in boutique investment banking, advisory practice, equity funds, equity research, and consulting companies. Earlier, he was the first CEO of Society for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, IIT Bombay, one of India's most successful and pioneering incubator. I welcome both of you, sir. I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Shashantu to begin the discussion.
Hi, thank you, Kakul. Hi, Sushantu.
Thank you very much for being here. And I think we're running behind a little bit behind time. And we have, of course, only 30 minutes. So I will straight away jump into the questions, Nikhil, so that we can get the maximum out of the time that we have. And I think time is the most valuable component for any startup, right? So you actually dropped out of school, right, to take part in a chess tournament. So you followed your dream. So, if you can just share what sort of thoughts that came to your mind and what really made you make that decision. A lot of students here would be interested to know, how do you take such a tough decision?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say, Sushantu, that it was one thing in isolation. A combination of factors when I was really young, when I was about 14 or 15, led me to kind of drop out of formal education, chess being one of them. I had a tiny cell phone business I would run at that point. So all of them put together helped me make that decision. I think to add a caveat there, I was never a very good student. So I think that helped significantly aid that decision as well.
Right. So if, again, since the audience is largely, students and startups, so I'm sure a lot of founders are going through that same situation now, whether do they drop what they are doing and jump straight into what they want to do? Or should they take a sort of complete their education or complete what they're doing and then go and do what their heart tells them to do?
Well, I'm sure a different thing works for everybody. Plenty can be said about the, our system of pedagogy in India and all that is wrong with the education system, especially when it comes to financial literacy. I think we spend far too much time teaching a student how to make money, but we don't spend any time at all teaching them how to manage that money better or to do anything which resembles a career in fintech or financial services. So plenty has to change, and I feel like some people have a different journey who are academically very gifted. They might go on to study and specialize in a certain niche and do incredibly well. For me, since the target goal was to be in the stock markets, I don't think formal education would have helped me too much to that end. So I would say nothing is right, nor is anything wrong. Different things probably work for different people.
And then, Nikhil, you went on to do your first startup or the fund management startup with your brother. And when you thought of that, again, did you face some opposition from your family members or from your friends and say, hey, you're not even completing school or college and you want to do another startup? So did you face that?
Well, Sushantu, whenever you're doing anything which is not conventional in a way, disregarding whatever I might have been doing in life, for South Indian middle class parents to come to terms with the fact that their son is no longer in school or college is hard. And I mean, I get that. I think we are culturally predisposed to think in a certain manner. So yeah, sure, it did happen. But like I said, for specifically the industry, I'm not encouraging anybody to drop out of college. I know this forum is for a certain audience, but for my particular niche in my target pocket, I don't think formally there are any courses available in India which kind of prep you for what is required on the ground in either fintech or in anything around financial services. That says a lot, that has to change. I think it's a huge opportunity. It's an ecosystem which is growing exponentially. Everybody's talking fintech now, but to not have course material or formal education which is specifically targeted to this industry is a pity. I think you guys as BML Munjal University should definitely consider it, and maybe it'll be a good addition to the plethora of other courses you have to offer already.
Just on the topic of education, a lot of colleges and universities have entrepreneurship as a formal course. Do you have any view on that? Can entrepreneurship be taught in schools and colleges, or you think that there are other ways to teach entrepreneurship?
Well, I'm sure anything can be taught, you know. At the end of the day, somebody who wants to learn and is receptive enough, he can choose to get that education at a college, at a school, or, you know, by experience out in the market. All of those different models or means of teaching definitely do work. Now, I think the importance here has to be given to, you know, the quality of curriculum, the on-hand experience that a college can provide their students while attempting to teach them entrepreneurship. And yeah, sure. I mean, if you create a good enough course with the right teachers and a great curriculum, and give these students people on the time on the ground as well, I'm sure it can be taught.
Got it. And just to right now the startup ecosystem is sort of blossoming out, and of course things like COVID and all do sort of deter a few people, saying that, look, there is so much mayhem going around, and you really don't know how long this is going to last. But if there were an entrepreneur on the other side, what would be your advice to him? Would it be to start now? If everything else was fine before COVID, he should, or do you think he should wait for a while, or she should wait for a while before the clouds lift, so as to speak?
In fact, the opposite, you know, I would say the time is ripe. Now probably is better than any other time to start something new. I'm guessing you guys, when you say startup, what you actually mean is some form of a technology business which is rooted online to a large extent. I think people have plenty of time, to test a better product, but also to discover a new kind of service that they have not known up until now. So I think the time is ripe for innovation. You know, there are two ways to approach this, right? One way would be to think, okay, there is COVID and maybe now is not the right time. We'll try next year or whatever. The other way to look at what is happening in the world from an entrepreneur's lens is people have exponentially more free time available at hand, where they can be sold new product, where they have the time to attempt new kind of services. So definitely plenty of opportunities for one to take advantage of right now.
Okay. People are, of course, more open to ideas at this point of time than any time before.
So if I give you an example, Sushant, to say in our industry in fintech, right? So the number of people who have direct or indirect exposure to stock markets in India is about, out of the 140 crore people we have, that's about 1.5 crore people. About 1.5% of our country has either direct or indirect exposure. That number is exponentially higher in America, for example, where it could be, 60-70%. The largest rise in the last decade that we have seen to this number has been in the COVID year, which began March of last year up until now. More new people, younger investors have come onto the market in this 1 year alone during COVID than we have witnessed in maybe the last 5 or 10 years. So
absolutely, so I'm part of an angel network, and we've seen exactly that happen. More younger people joining as investors, and we were actually surprised that we did more business this year in angel investing than any other year in the year of the COVID, right? So I completely agree with that and can resonate. So those of you who are thinking, holding back, this is probably the time to continue your plans in a more amenable world where people are willing to try out. Even e-commerce volumes have gone 10x in America, and probably just as much here in India. But moving on, Nikhil, you did the next startup, that is Zerodha, which for those of you who don't know is zero and Ada means to break the barrier, right? So that was like, that was really disrupting the market, right? So brokerage, as the term suggests, is taking brokerage per transaction, and you moved away from that into a zero brokerage per transaction model. So didn't the competition of all these big brokerage firms and banks and financial institutions sort of daunt you from taking up something so radical in a very staid world of finance? And finance in a way is a very conservative world, right? So
Sure. So I think two big outliers there. We started in 2009, just after the financial crisis of 2008. We were traders. We were paying 0.5% of brokerage on every transaction we did. So if I bought shares worth X, 0.5% would go to my broker. And as a day trader, somebody trading with leverage, if you have to make a living trading, it becomes very prohibitive to pay that much in brokerage and yet continue to remain profitable. So for us, the use case was very simple. We wanted to create a product that we would use. Hence, we became brokers. We started in 2009 when there was no money around, just after the crises. Nobody was really throwing any money into the financial ecosystem. Very unlike today. Back in the day, the concept of venture capital, PE, all of that was not what it is today. So we got very lucky to have been in the right place at the right time when we ventured into broking. The two things we did well, I think, is we actually tried to figure out what is the cheapest cost at which we can clear a certain transaction. If Sushantu buys a share and Kakul sells a share, what is the cost to me as broker and how much can I bring it down? And we figured with the use of technology and removing a lot of redundant manpower in between the transaction. It could be a relationship manager, a guy on the phone who picks up and says, okay, we eliminated all of that. That worked very well for us. We were significantly cheaper. We started charging a flat fee of 20 rupees per transaction, immaterial of how much one were to buy. The second big thing which really worked for us is the incumbent players of the time were very opaque. They did not tell you what exactly they are charging you outside of being expensive. They had, leakages when it came to demat fees. They charged too much interest when they were lending. There were a bunch of inefficiencies in the model. I think the latter worked even more for us than the former. The transparency element is generally something that really clicked for us. We very much tried to build a community of traders like us who use the platform versus approaching the problem like a corporation wherein we model and build a product that many people can use. And the trading community, I think, really loved the fact that there were a couple of traders who started a broking platform. They're doing it at 1/10 the cost of everybody else. And that really worked. And the great thing about Zerodha over the years has been that we have never really had to do an ad, or not have we ever had to do any marketing. We don't even have a sales team. We don't cold call anybody. The intention behind the company from the very beginning has been take the revenue you make, spend it on the product, build a better product, and with a better product, more people will organically come to you via word of mouth. And that has worked for us, helped us remain lean, helped us stay away from taking investment. So we've never, raised any capital. We're bootstrapped to the day. So I think these two things were the big differentiator as to why Zerodha worked and other people of that time did not.
So maybe what I understand is extreme customer focus and focusing on, since you came as a customer, so you had your feet very much planted in the customer's mind, and you were able to do this. So, but I'm sure a lot of young people today are looking at doing something really disruptive, and many a time they're going to need a lot of money to start with it. So how did you manage the cash flows when you were building this product, getting customers on board, And what is your advice to the young people today who might be trying to do something like what you did?
Yeah, so we went the alternative route. We decided we didn't have much, cost of acquisition because of not doing any marketing or advertising. But B, we ran a very lean ship from the very beginning, even when we did not have much revenue coming in. What somebody would do with 50 people, we tried to do it with 4 or 5 people, using a lot of technology and just being a lot more efficient. I think that it's a small thing to say, but if we all look upon our own organizations and we look at the people who work around us, if you were to ask yourself, uh, if you had to eliminate 30 out of 100 people, can this company still function at the same level of efficiency that it can with 100 people? Most often you would find the answer is yes. We hire people for a whole host of reasons, and we continue to retain them for a whole host of reasons. But uh, our entire model at the beginning, at least, was, to be lean, to be able to afford to offer the cheapest brokerage rates available out there. And that mindset and culture has kind of, percolated through different pockets of the organization, and we continue to retain that today in a way.
So, the other, business like your scaling is critical. And if you were to, your company is really scaled well to be the largest broking company in India. And so what are the challenges that you face in scaling? And, whether it's technology or people, getting the right people and so on and so forth. So was it like you had the whole idea in your head to start with and you just built out the pieces, or did it evolve the concept of Zerodha and what it did over a period of time?
So Shantu, we've been very organic through the last 11 years of Zerodha. We've never really sat down and made a plan saying, this is what we will do in 1 year, this is where we will be at 3 years. If you were to ask us today what we will be doing in 3 years, the blatant, honest truth is we don't really know. I think the one thing that we have all followed is, markets evolve and ecosystems change rapidly. By virtue of not having external investors and too many people to answer to before you make a decision, we have retained the ability to remain nimble and agile. And our endeavor is to change faster than the competition. If there is a certain product to be built which can help our captive audience, we want to think of it first and build it first and change before anyone else. We're also not a team which is very traditional. The entire management team does not have a single MBA, for example. We don't follow the structures you would associate with a traditional organization. Also, we're a very young group. So I think that works well for us. The fact that we don't plan too far ahead. We are more people who are like, okay, instead of spending this time planning, we'll keep our ears to the ground. We'll watch every little thing changing around us very closely and react and anticipate and build according to how things are changing around us on a dynamic basis.
Right. Thanks. So you had a co-founder, right, in your brother, and that's obviously worked out very well. Now you have 3 running businesses. A lot of entrepreneurs in India struggle to find a co-founder, and sometimes it's the same, wing mates in an engineering college, or just your friend, or maybe your husband or wife who's doing something else becomes the co-founder, right? So one is it absolutely essential to have a co-founder? And B, what's your, what's your guidance to somebody who's looking for a co-founder?
Well, I'll tell you one thing which has worked very well for me and Nitin, for example, is demarcate what your expertise is from the very beginning. in our case, for example, he's very good with people. He's very good with inspiring a vision and, generally breeding a really large team towards a common goal. And he's great at product and stuff like that. I, on the other hand, am terrible at all of that. I focus more on maybe mathematics or risk management, investing, stuff around the market more closely. That works very well for us. So I think to have somebody who has an ancillary skill set, he's not good at the exact same things that you're good at, is probably very important, because replication at the end of the day in a company is probably not the most useful way to allocate resources. The other piece of advice I could give people starting off today is uh, put everything down and have roles, responsibilities, equity, all the nitty-gritties that could come down the line to haunt you again. Have ample clarity on it from the very beginning. Many people often like to start a company with a handshake, and they don't worry too much about putting things down in paper. I think maintaining some hygiene and discipline there and having things on paper definitely reduces the number of issues that could arise, when things work out or when they don't work out many years down the line. So seek that sense of clarity from the very beginning.
So you also ventured into one is of course True Beacon, where you invest monies on behalf of your clients. Again, where you've disrupted the typical asset management fee structure of other wealth managers, where you just take a flat share of the profits rather than any fixed fee. And then also moved on to venture capital and so on. So just putting it all together in the interest of time, what do you see the future, which are the sectors, and what do you see the future of Indian startups? And in specific, and of course the economy and the stock markets in general. So I'm combining the two things together.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, you're in this world, but from my lens, I think it's a huge bubble out there, especially even when I compare private companies to publicly listed companies. I think where we sit today, where all these unicorns and companies which are throwing ridiculous number of losses are, valued at today, it very much reminds me of a 2008 or 2000 or maybe 1979 or 44 or 19 or 29 or whatever. I think people are people in the West, like governments in the West, are printing excessive amounts of money with no financial oversight, and I think the repercussions of that money flow in India are causing some kind of a bubble here as well. Like if today you were to bring me a private company in, say, banking, and you were to offer me that versus a listed banking player, I think the stock markets are doing a better job at valuing a company than venture capital firms and private equity or any kind of a fund across the world is today. So I think these valuations and these mind-boggling numbers will come down at some point. There will be a rationalization of a sort. And personally, I'm kind of like shying away from venturing into anything, because I know when I start a negotiation with them, whatever they're going to ask is going to be ridiculous.
Okay. So you're like, does it mean that you're sort of taking a break from venture investments at this moment, or?
We're kind of focusing on venture investments around climate change in the last 1 year. So most of what we have done is there. Typically not for profit stuff around, there are some really interesting companies out there as well. And we've been focusing on that ecosystem.
So now, of course, we've run out of time, but one last question before you go. is that, you're a young man, you set up, successfully, whether we like it or not, with a unicorn valuation. That's what youngsters are looking for. But what next? Do you want to do many other ventures after this, or you want to venture into something completely different? What's your long-term plan? And the same way, if you could suggest, if there are people who are, young, what should they look at in building up their life? Is it every 3 years, or is it they have a whole life plan? And what's your sort of take on that personally, and then for the rest of folks?
Yeah, so to all the young people on this, I think growing up, I was insecure about a lot of stuff. It could be financial motivations, or having something which could be called successful. That feeling never goes away. You can be a part of many really large companies which have done really well. If you're seeking that satisfaction from one facet of your life, which is professional success, I think you live a life where you're not very content, and you're insecure throughout. I think you have to find a balance. Professional success is not everything. Making money is not everything. If anything, the last 1.5 years with the COVID has made most people who have spent the last 20 years on that one focused, the kind of people who have one focused goal in mind, think is, what does someone do with money if there's nowhere to go and spend it, right? What was the point of it all? I think you have to work on being more balanced in life, focus on having fun, focus on having many different facets to your life outside of that one company, that one profession that you might think is the end all right now. I feel like every 5 years, when I look back at my life and I think about all that I worried about 5 years ago, it could be, how much marks somebody gets, or some relationship someone might be in, or what the parents or teachers might expect of you. 5 years down the line, you're going to look
Doesn't
back and
matter
look
anymore.
yeah, you're like, what was wrong with me? So try to have a more, holistic approach on life, and don't look at the next 2-3 years alone, but look at the next 20-30 years and work backwards from there as to, all that you would want in life. Sure, you would want one profession in which you succeed, but knowing the way in which the world is evolving today, you will probably have 5 different professions in the next 30 years. And you will enjoy some, you will not enjoy some. But I think don't be short-sighted in your approach. Try to step back and look at the bigger picture as often as you can.
And what are your plans?
Well, I think work and doing stuff keeps me occupied. And while I'm occupied, I'm not spending as much time thinking about what is wrong with the world and what is wrong with my life. Hence, I focus on, staying occupied. Is it the right thing? Is it the wrong thing? I think time will tell. But for now, I'm occupied. If I had to do exactly what I do today in a more efficient, smarter manner, I could probably do it in 4 hours a day. But then I would not know what to do with the other 10 hours of my time. So I'm taking 14 hours to do what I should be doing in 4 hours, because I don't want 10 hours of idle time.
So we've completely run out of time. I will request the organizers to collect the questions, have them sent to me and Nikhil. We'll answer them over email. Thank you very much, Nikhil. And over to you, Professor Davinder.
Thank you, Shushanto. Thank you, Nikhil, for coming for this fireside conversation. Special thanks to Nikhil. It's amazing to hear you speak about life and your and your philosophy. But some things I think would echo a lot with the students, especially they seem to have this whole concept is very different from people of our age, Shushanto and mine. And I think that's what is interesting. And I think during these conversations, it is for us to pick up more than what students have to pick up. How do we kind of give them the environment to go forth and make new bridges, new roads. Right? Thank you so much, Nikhil, for coming, and thank you, Shushanto, for being here with us. And thanks a lot. Over to you, Kakul.
Thank you so much for the discussion. Now, can I request Devinder sir to please say a few words?
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us today on the first day of Propel Pitchfest 21. We hope you picked up good points from the three panel discussion that we had. The first discussion being on how investors and founders come together and create a good winning team and combination. Then we had a very interesting discussion on how India-UK collaboration can happen. How we can, sitting in India, the startups in India can connect with a lot of opportunities which are being offered both through the government of UK as well as through various other bodies, Neil being one of them, and also the startup, the Steam House Incubator at the Birmingham City University. And of course, the last one where we had very young Nikhil Kamath from Zerodha, a company which is being still bootstrapped and has become a unicorn, and how his take on entrepreneurship is. What we would have all seen is that there is no one single formula for success in this area of entrepreneurship startup. Each of the entrepreneurs and each of the investors and each of the people who have come on this panel and discussion so far have brought varied and at times also diametrically opposing views. Now, this is what actually is the intent of our Pitchfest 21 discussion, is to really show and demonstrate to young startups that there are different perspectives and they need to evaluate them, and the one which works for them, which they believe in, they should go forward. But one thing very clearly everybody has said is that it's a journey which comes with a lot of hard work, a lot of perseverance. It also comes with certain setbacks, and it's very important that as a startup, as a person who's wanting to be a successful entrepreneur, don't let these setbacks kind of hold you and not let you pursue your dream. Go ahead and go forward and take these in stride, learn from them and go forward. So thank you everybody for being here today. Tomorrow, we would start at 2:30 again. We would have the grand finale of the two pitches, the two tracks, followed by another fireside conversation. And then we would have the result announcement and valedictory session, where we would be joined by Mr. Saurabh Srivastav, who is the head of Indian Angels Network. So we look forward to you all coming again on this platform and being with us as well. In the meantime, please be safe and stay home. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining. Be sure to join for the finals tomorrow. Stay home, stay safe. Thank you.